Welcome to Anime Audiobook channel. Naruto, Drop System. Chapter 51, Manipulation Behind the Scenes, A Cruel World. Aside from Yagyu, 23 other candidates passed the second exam. Out of those, only 6 were not from Konoha, the rest were all Konoha genin. First, there were the 12 rookies, who alone took up 12 slots. Because of Kaiba Inyazuka, his 2 teammates also passed the second exam, bringing the total to 14. Kabuto Yakushi and his 2 teammates, who were Orochimaru's spies planted in Konoha, took up another 3 slots. Even though Yagyu had already eliminated the Sound Ninja trio, 3 more Sound Ninja had still managed to pass the second exam. Clearly, in the 5 days since, Kabuto had learned of TOS and the others' deaths and reported it to Orochimaru. These 3 new Sound Ninja were likely replacements sent in by Kabuto or Orochimaru. Their goal was simple, to give Orochimaru an excuse to appear here. After all, without the Sound Ninja trio returning to report, Orochimaru didn't know if Sasuke Uchiha had used the power of the curse mark and whether he appreciated the gift he had been given. Orochimaru was likely here to observe Sasuke's reaction for himself. So, including the 12 rookies, Kaiba's 2 teammates, Kabuto's group, 3 Sound Ninja, and Gaara's sibling trio, there were exactly 24 participants left. Cough, cough. I'm the proctor for this exam, Gekkou Heiate, came a weak voice. After Hiruzen Sarutobi's speech, the proctor, Gekkou Heiate, appeared in a flash, holding a clipboard. His sickly appearance, with dark circles under his eyes and a frail demeanor, made many of the genin question if he really was a jonin. But Heiate paid no mind to their stares and pointed at the large screen on the wall, saying, "Soon, the screen will display your names and randomly pair you up for matches. The names that appear will stay, and everyone else should head to the balcony on the second floor to wait. Before we begin the elimination matches, I need to confirm, is there anyone who wishes to forfeit?" As soon as Heiate finished speaking, Kabuto stepped forward from the crowd, raising his hand. "I choose to forfeit. Your name is Kabuto Yakushi, right? Understood, you may leave." Heiate looked at his clipboard, checked Kabuto's name, and said, "With 1 forfeit, that leaves. I forfeit as well. And me." At that moment, 2 of the Sound Ninja stood up, also choosing to forfeit. The jonin present exchanged curious glances at this, though their expressions showed understanding when they noticed the bandages on the 2 Sound Ninja. They didn't know much about this newly formed village, but seeing the state of these 2, it was clear that they were weak. It was likely they had reached their limit, so their forfeits drew attention away from Kabuto. "Understood, you may all leave," Heiate said, crossing off 2 more names. With 3 forfeits, there are now 21 participants left. 1 person will have a bye. Since no one else is forfeiting, I declare the elimination matches to begin. After waiting a few moments to see if anyone else would forfeit, Heiate pulled out a radio and signaled the examiners backstage, "Let's begin." Whir. The large screen on the wall lit up, displaying the names of the 21 remaining participants. After all the names appeared, a large VS symbol flashed between them. The names on either side of the VS cycled rapidly. Soon, 2 names settled, Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akadu. Seeing these names, Yagyu couldn't help but chuckle to himself. So much for random pairings, this was clearly rigged. Had Sasuke's name not appeared first, Yagyu might have believed it was a coincidence. But with it being the same as in the original story, it was obvious that Hiruzen Sarutobi had deliberately arranged this to ensure Sasuke could quickly be taken away to have his curse mark sealed. "Sasuke Uchiha and Yoroi Akadu, stay here," Everyone else, please move to the balcony on the second floor, Hayate announced. Yagyu and the others moved to the balcony, standing beside their Jonin instructors. Kurane Yui once again gave Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino a thumbs up, smiling as she said, "Great work. Once the exams are over, I'll treat you all to some barbecue." Thanks to Hinata's Byakugan and Shino's bugs, we didn't need to waste time searching for the other teams or the central tower, Yagyu replied with a grin. Hinata blushed shyly, while Shino, in his usual calm manner, said, "Yagyu's genjutsu was the key factor." "Don't be so modest, you all performed excellently," Kurane praised, patting both Yagyu and Shino on the shoulder before wrapping an arm around Hinata's shoulders. "Now, let's watch the matches. You can see how you measure up against the others and get a sense of your future opponent's abilities." "Yes." The three nodded in agreement, either standing or leaning against the balcony railing as they watched Suzuki and Yoroi face off below. Yoroi Akido was one of Kabuto's teammates and an undercover agent planted in Konoha by Orochimaru. It was no coincidence that Orochimaru's pawn had been matched with Suzuki. Yagyu smirked at the thought. Master and apprentice are clearly both meddling with the matchups. The battle began and ended quickly. As in the original story, Suzuki, due to the curse mark, was unable to use his Sharingan, forcing him to rely on his academy-level skills to fight Yoroi. However, Yoroi possessed chakra absorption abilities, making it difficult for Suzuki, already weakened by the curse mark, to defeat him. Just as the curse mark threatened to spread further, Suzuki managed to suppress it with sheer willpower and defeated Yoroi using his newly developed lion barrage technique. It seemed that Suzuki had indeed encountered Guy's team during the second exam, and Lee must have given him a proper education on the way out of the complex. Orochimaru, watching Suzuki win without using the curse mark, grew even more intrigued by this vessel. After the match, Kakashi took Suzuki away to seal the curse mark, while Orochimaru quietly slipped away. The screen flickered again, and the names for the second match soon appeared: Shino Aberame vs Tsurugi Misumi. "Well, that's it for me. No way I'm getting past this," came a despairing voice from the other side of the balcony. Kaiba's civilian teammate, holding his head in frustration, shouted, "I'm done for. Facing someone like Shino, I'm definitely out." Hearing this, Naruto shouted back indignantly, "Hey, what's that supposed to mean?" Tsurugi didn't respond to Naruto, instead drawing strength from Kaiba and their other female teammates' encouragement as he steeled himself to face Shino. As expected, the match ended with Shino's easy victory. Unless a civilian ninja was favored by their Jonin instructor, promoted to Chunin, or exchanged military achievements for jutsu scrolls, they would be lucky to learn even one or two jutsu in their lifetime. Moreover, civilian ninja often had very limited chakra reserves. In the original story, Kakashi Hatake was shocked when Suzuki, a prodigy, could use a C-rank jutsu like fire style, Great Fireball Jutsu at such a young age. Most civilian ninja didn't even have enough chakra to use a C-rank jutsu at this age. Against Shino, who had been trained by his clan since childhood and could wield a wide array of insect techniques, Tsurugi was lucky not to have been knocked out in the first few seconds. Shino had clearly held back. This world, where bloodlines ruled supreme, was indeed a harsh and cruel one. Chapter 52, Hinata and Yagyu's Opponents, A Battle of Top Students. After Shino Abarame's victory, the pairings for the third match quickly appeared. Kenshin Misumi vs Kankuro. Like Yoroi Akido, Kenshin Misumi was one of Orochimaru's spies planted in Konoha, and one of Kabuto's two teammates. However, this particular spy didn't seem very bright. During his fight against Kankuro, he shamelessly used his body modification technique, making his body stretch and bend like a snake. Those unfamiliar with Orochimaru might not notice anything unusual. But for those who knew him well, like his former disciple, Anko Mitarashi, or Hiruzen Sarutobi, they could clearly see Orochimaru's influence in Kenshin's techniques. Even if Kenshin won, he would likely be handed over to the interrogation department afterward. Unfortunately for him, Kenshin wasn't a match for Kankuro. At first, his body modification technique caused Kankuro some trouble. But once Kankuro understood his abilities, and with no new tricks up Kenshin's sleeve, Kankuro quickly defeated him using his puppet. The fifth match was Shikamaru Nara vs Terareiki. Terareiki was the only remaining sound ninja who hadn't forfeited. However, before Shikamaru could step forward, the sound ninja raised his hand and said, "I forfeit." This drew strange looks from many in the audience. Some, more suspicious, eyed him with scrutiny. It was odd. He hadn't forfeited earlier but was now choosing to withdraw what was his game unbothered by the stares from high-ranking officials. The sound ninja forfeited and quickly left. His and his teammates' mission was merely to cover for Orochimaru and Kabuto. Now that Orochimaru's goal was achieved, there was no reason for them to stay. After all, they were far weaker than TOS and his group. Hiruzen Sarutobi, smoking his pipe, whispered to a nearby special jonin, "Investigate these sound ninja and their jonin instructor." "Yes, sir." With the sound ninja's withdrawal, the names on the screen began to flash once again. At the same time, a figure quietly appeared on the second-floor balcony. It was Kakashi, having just finished sealing Sasuke's curse mark. Instead of reporting to Hiruzen Sarutobi about his encounter with Orochimaru in the sealed room, Kakashi informed Naruto and Sakura of Sasuke's condition before joining them to watch the upcoming matches. As the sixth match was revealed, no one noticed the sudden change in Yagyu's expression as he leaned against the railing, his pupils contracting to the extreme. How is this possible? The sixth match displayed, Hinata Hyuga vs Yumiko. Yagyu was very familiar with Yumiko, as were Hinata, Shikamaru, and Koji. Before Hinata joined Yagyu's small circle, Yumiko had been Sakura's desk mate. But that wasn't the issue. The reason Yagyu was so shocked was, why is Hinata's opponent Yumiko from Suzuki Uchiha vs Yoroi Akadu? It was clear that, just like in the original story, the match pairings weren't random but manipulated. Sakura vs Ino could be chalked up to coincidence. But two matchups, without a doubt, had been deliberately arranged: Suzuki Uchiha vs Yoroi Akadu and Hinata Hyuga vs Niji Hyuga. As the last major clan in Konoha, the Hyuga clan was one of Hiruzen Sarutobi's most prized and important assets. If not for the fact that it was rare for a Hyuga to reach Kage-level power, and the fact that they had always remained loyal to the Hokage line, the Hyuga clan might have faced similar suppression as the Uchiha clan. Since the creation of the caged bird seal, the clan's main branch had always produced the most talented and strongest members. But this generation was different. The branch family had produced a prodigy, Niji Hyuga, who had been the top student in the 59th class of Konoha and its most outstanding genin. In the original story, Hiruzen Sarutobi arranged the match between Hinata and Niji to see whether the future of the Hyuga clan's strength lay with the main branch or the branch family. But now, Hinata's opponent wasn't Niji. Could it be that Hinata's match against Niji in the original story was just a coincidence? Was the only deliberate manipulation Suzuki vs Yoroi? Though confused, Yagyu didn't let it show. He smiled and encouraged Hinata. "Hinata, good luck." "Yes," Hinata nodded, smiling as she made her way down to the arena. As fate would have it, both she and Yumiko had been seated on the same side of the balcony. As they descended together, Yumiko quietly said to Hinata, "Hinata, please go easy on me." Hinata nodded seriously, I will. Hinata felt grateful toward Yumiko. Had Yumiko not agreed to switch seats with her, Hinata wouldn't have grown as close to Ino and Sakura as she had. Thanks to Yumiko's kindness, Hinata had formed the friendships she longed for and could be near the person she admired. So, Hinata decided to go easy on Yumiko during their match. When the fight began, Hinata didn't activate her Byakugan nor use her gentle fist techniques. Instead, she engaged Yumiko with only the basic taijutsu taught at the academy, treating the match like a friendly spar between novice genin. Throughout the fight, Yumiko only managed to use the basic academy techniques like the substitution jutsu. It wasn't that her jonin instructor hadn't taught her more, but that she hadn't yet mastered them. After about 20 exchanges, Hinata used a quick body flicker to appear behind Yumiko, holding a kunai to her neck, ending the fight. Watching Hinata's performance, Niji Hyuga, from Guy's team, furrowed his brow. His dislike for the Hyuga heiress deepened. She could have ended the fight quickly, so why hold back as the heiress of the main branch? Sparring like this with a civilian genin was a disgrace to the family name. Hiruzen Sarutobi, on the other hand, nodded in approval. Such kindness towards one's own was a rare and commendable trait among the ninja clans. If Hinata were to inherit the Hyuga clan, she would pose no threat to the village's leadership for decades to come. When Hinata returned to the balcony, the names on the screen started flashing again. Before Yagyu could congratulate her, many eyes turned toward him, his sensei Kurenai, Shino, and even Hinata. On the screen, the match was displayed as Yagyu vs Niji Hyuga. Yagyu's face showed a brief flicker of surprise. Hiruzen Sarutobi, watching from above, smiled knowingly, his pipe puffing small clouds of smoke. As Yagyu suspected, the match pairings were indeed rigged. When Hiruzen saw the list of participants who had passed the second exam, he initially considered testing the two Hyuga heirs against each other. But upon seeing Yagyu's name, Hiruzen changed his mind. Now, he wanted to witness a battle between this year's top student and last year's top student. At the same time, Hiruzen wanted to use this opportunity to evaluate Yagyu's potential, this exceptional civilian-born ninja. If Niji won, the Hyuga clan's inter-family conflict could play out in the final exam. But if Yagyu won, it would prove that he was worth investing in, making him a valuable asset for the Hokage's faction. This arrangement was a win-win for Hiruzen. Chapter 53, No More Pretending, Let's Reveal the Truth. I'm Senju Yagyu. Yagyu was indeed very surprised. Just a moment ago, he was still wondering if the original matchup between Hinata and Niji was just a coincidence. Then, in the next second, he was paired against Niji Hyuga himself. There was no doubt now. Yagyu's suspicions were correct. The pairings in the original story were manipulated, and they were still being manipulated now. However, instead of watching a battle between the main branch and branch family heirs of the Hyuga clan, Hiruzen Sarutobi was more interested in watching a match between the top students of two different classes. Yagyu calmed his emotions, nodded at the encouragement from his teammates in Team 8, and then used body flicker to appear in the arena. Yagyu, go for it. Don't hold back just because he's from Hinata's clan. Beat him up. Ino's energetic shout echoed across the arena, drawing stares from the audience, but she didn't care. This boldness made Sakura and Hinata a bit envious. Hinata, too shy, and Sakura, too ladylike, didn't have the courage to shout like that, so they silently cheered for Yagyu in their hearts. This kid has quite the charm, doesn't he? Asuma Sarutobi, lighting a cigarette, muttered enviously, is it true that being handsome lets you do whatever you want? Ever since their days at the Ninja Academy, he hadn't even managed to win over Kurenai. But Yagyu, he was surrounded by three beautiful and adorable girls, and they all seemed to get along perfectly. If it were anyone else, Asuma would have suspected that the girls were pretending to like each other. But he knew Ino well, and he understood that she wasn't faking it. How did Yagyu manage to keep things so balanced? Byakugan activate. Niji Hyuga, who had just stepped down from the viewing platform, activated his Byakugan. However, he didn't immediately assume the gentle fist stance or attack Yagyu. Instead, he carefully examined Yagyu's body. Just as I thought. A few seconds later, Niji wore a knowing expression. I was curious about this when we were at the academy. You, a commoner with no personal teacher, how could you surpass the heirs of the great clans, and how did you manage to use a B-rank water release in the 5th grade? By all rights, your background should have doomed you to mediocrity, with no chance of achieving greatness. But somehow, you did the impossible, as if defying fate itself. Now I see, you didn't defy fate. The reason you've always been able to surpass even the heirs of great clans and hold the top student position is because it's your destiny. Niji pointed at Yagyu, continuing, your chakra reserves are at least dozens of times greater than mine. Aside from that blonde idiot and that guy from the sand village with the gourd, not even Lord Hokage has as much chakra as you. What? Hearing this, the genin and even the jonin in the stands were shocked. Many of the more skilled or specialized jonin immediately began to sense Yagyu's chakra levels, and their expressions turned to astonishment. Incredible chakra levels, at least dozens of times more than mine. Isn't he Kurene's student? She sure lucked out. Kakashi Hatake lifted his headband, revealing his Sharingan, and analyzed Yagyu. Such chakra reserves, and his hair and eye color. Could he be? As the jonin around him murmured in awe, Hiruzen Sarutobi, smoking his pipe, stared through the thin haze of smoke at Yagyu below, feeling a rush of excitement. So similar, incredibly similar. Watching Yagyu, who remained unfazed, Niji continued, the history books record that the Senju clan, in an effort to integrate with both the clans and the common people of Konoha, had many of their members give up the Senju name and blend into the village. After decades, the Senju are Konoha, and Konoha is the Senju. Silver hair, red eyes, and incredible chakra reserves. Your features are almost identical to the second Hokage. It's clear now. You are a descendant of the Senju clan, having inherited their bloodline, which explains why you've always been able to surpass even Uchiha Sasuke and the heirs of other major clans. Gasp! The moment Niji finished speaking, all the jonin in the stands collectively drew a sharp breath. All their previous doubts suddenly cleared away, like clouds parting to reveal the sun. Silver hair and red eyes, combined with this chakra, he really does resemble the second Hokage. A descendant of the Senju clan, no wonder he's the top student this year, and in such a remarkable class too. I wonder just how strong he really is. Kurane Yui, finally realizing the truth, muttered to herself, no wonder Yagyu could use such powerful water release techniques in a place without water. It all makes sense now. Yagyu-kun. Hinata's eyes widened as she stared at Yagyu, her heart filling with an indescribable joy. If Yagyu truly was a descendant of the Senju clan, maybe, just maybe, she could be with him. Her father and the elders wouldn't oppose the relationship. In the eyes of the Uchiha, they and the Senju were two of the founding clans of Konoha. But to the other ninja clans and the daimyo, the Senju were the true creators of Konoha, while the Uchiha were seen as the defeated, the clan that Senju Hashirama had eventually subdued. In their eyes, the Senju were the legitimate founders. That's why, when Tsunade returned to the village, she was immediately chosen to be the fifth Hokage, and even Danzo didn't dare to contest the decision. He couldn't contest it. If Yagyu really was a descendant of the Senju, his status and position would change entirely. He wouldn't need Ino to approach the Hyuga clan on his behalf. Instead, he could go to them directly. Previously, if Yagyu had pursued Hinata, it would have seemed like a frog desiring a swan, foolish and overreaching, but if Yagyu was a descendant of the Senju, it would be a perfect match, two golden children destined to be together. In this world, still ruled by feudal lords and nobles, these double standards were all too common. Your theory is interesting, but it lacks evidence, Yagyu said with a smile. However, I'm flattered. After all, the second Hokage is my idol. After speaking, Yagyu raised his hand, making a gesture of respect with two fingers, saying, as fellow Konoha ninja, please guide me. I'm confident in my theory. It's your destiny, Niji said, raising his own hand in the same gesture, filled with fighting spirit. And your defeat will also be your destiny. After exchanging the formal ninja salute, Niji immediately assumed the gentle fist stance. But in the next moment, both Niji and all the ninja watching were stunned. Yagyu didn't lower his fingers. Instead, he quickly formed a series of hand signs. Single-handed seals. Then Yagyu inhaled deeply, puffing his cheeks, and shouted, "Water release, great waterfall technique." It was as if a dam had burst. A torrent of water shot from Yagyu's mouth, drawing moisture from the air as it expanded into a massive wave, towering even above the viewing platform. It surged forward like a god of the sea, crashing down toward the small figure of Niji Hyuga. Chapter 54, Shockwaves throughout the arena, Hiruzen Sarutobi's excitement. Rotation. Staring at the massive wave crashing down on him, Niji Hyuga's eyes widened. He didn't even have time to be shocked by Yagyu's one-handed seals. Niji immediately spun, releasing chakra from all of his body's points, executing the 8 trigrams palms, revolving heaven, a technique only taught to the main family but which Niji had learned through his own genius. A massive spherical barrier of chakra instantly formed around him. It wasn't that Niji wanted to use rotation, he had no choice. Yagyu's one-handed seals were too fast for anyone to react. Moreover, his water release technique was incredibly overwhelming, so much so that the massive wave, taller than the viewing platform, would flood the entire hall. Niji had no space to evade. As soon as Niji's chakra barrier formed, the water wave crashed down on the rotating sphere. Boom! A deafening roar echoed as the tremendous water flow surged outward, filling the hall. The proctor, Hayate had to instantly retreat to the second-floor platform. Just as the water level neared the stands, it seemed to hit an invisible barrier, diverting into other parts of the tower. Yagyu, standing on the water's surface with chakra infused in his feet, crouched down and placed his hand into the water. A small whirlpool formed around his hand, spiraling upward like a snake, coiling around his arm. As the water level swiftly dropped, the still spinning chakra barrier remained intact. But all eyes weren't on the barrier, they were fixed on Yagyu's hand. In Yagyu's hand was a spear made of water. Seeing this, the jonin in the stands, their pupils contracted sharply. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi and Kakashi Hatake were visibly stunned. Might Guy, who usually had a jovial attitude, was now serious, ready to step in and forfeit the match for Niji. But he was just a second too late. Whoosh! The sharp whistling of the spear cutting through the air filled the arena. Yagyu leaped high, hurling the water spear with immense force. Like a shooting star, the high-speed spinning chakra barrier shattered with a crack. Niji, who had been spinning within, was thrown to the ground. Nearby, the water spear had embedded itself deep into the floor beside him, its head and shaft buried in the ground. The next moment, the water spear exploded. A terrifying suction force, like an invisible giant hand, grabbed Niji and spun him violently in the air. Water from the surrounding atmosphere gathered, forming a swirling vortex. More and more water accumulated in the blink of an eye, creating a massive water tornado. The intense suction force caused the Jonin and Genin on the platform to grab onto the railing, chakra coursing through their feet to hold them steady as they resisted the pull of the water tornado. 8 gates, 5th gate of limit. Open. Just as the water tornado threatened to destroy the arena and the second-floor platform, a powerful shout rang out. In an instant, a figure enveloped in green energy shot out like an arrow from the viewing platform, delivering a kick to the water tornado. The terrifying water tornado was immediately dispersed by the kick, and the resulting chakra and water turned into a torrential rain that soaked the entire hall and viewing platform, drenching everyone. The figure responsible for this was none other than Might Guy. When the rain finally ceased, Guy was standing with the unconscious Niji in his arms. The match is over. The winner is Yagyu. Haegek reappeared in the hall and announced the result. The entire arena was silent. Everyone, from Genin to Jonin, even Hiruzen Sarutobi himself, had forgotten about being drenched. All eyes were on Yagyu, who was calmly slicking back his wet hair with his hand. Gulp. Someone audibly swallowed, breaking the tense silence. Shaky voices started to murmur, SS rank water release. There's no mistake. That level of elemental transformation and shape manipulation, it's definitely a secret technique of the highest level. A water vortex, a water spear, and a water tornado. Isn't that the second Hokage's water release, water severing wave? He really is a descendant of the Senju clan. The discussion spread like wildfire throughout the hall. The Jonin who recognized the water-severing wave looked at Yagyu with newfound awe. Before, they had been skeptical of Niji's deductions. But now, after witnessing Yagyu's mastery of water release, they were 90% convinced. Silver hair, red eyes, an enormous chakra reserve, and mastery of the second Hokage's ultimate water release technique. Yagyu was like a younger version of Tobirama Senju. Unfazed by the attention, Yagyu calmly walked over to Might Guy and smiled. My attack avoided hitting his body. He's only suffering from water inhalation and chakra depletion. Let me heal him. Thanks, kid, Might Guy grinned, his signature toothy smile returning. There wasn't a hint of anger or dissatisfaction over how Yagyu had nearly taken down his student. As Yagyu began healing Niji, Hiruzen Sarutobi watched from the stands, his hands trembling slightly as he held his pipe. His emotions were surging, indescribably intense. Sarutobi had been observing Yagyu since his time at the academy. After all, the class of Konoha Year 60 was incredibly special. Naruto's generation symbolized the future of Konoha. Their success would mark the village's rebirth. Their failure would mean Konoha's demise. Anyone who dared harm this new generation would cross Hiruzen's bottom line, even Danzo, who Sarutobi had tolerated for so long. To ensure their growth and safety, Sarutobi had assigned Kakashi to guide Naruto and Sasuke, Asuma to lead the Inoshika-cho trio, and Konoha's Genjutsu specialist to instruct Team 8. Even Niji, who had graduated a year earlier, was placed under Might Guy, ensuring their protection. Of these Jonin instructors, 3 were elite Jonin, showcasing just how much Sarutobi valued these 12 young ninjas. Originally, Yagyu hadn't been part of Sarutobi's inner circle of concern. But after Yagyu became the top student and continued to hold that position while forming close ties with the heirs of the Hyuga and Yamanaka clans, he finally caught Sarutobi's attention. Sarutobi had observed Yagyu several times through his crystal ball, watching him teach Ino and the others tree climbing, water walking, and medical ninjutsu. He'd noticed Yagyu's exceptional chakra control and marked him as a talent worth nurturing. When he later saw Yagyu use water release and sensory techniques, Sarutobi decided to take a gamble. He wanted to see if Yagyu had the potential to wield yin release chakra. That's why, during team placements, Sarutobi had chosen Yagyu over Kaiba Inyazuka. After receiving positive feedback from Kurane about Yagyu's abilities, Sarutobi began to see Yagyu as a potential new genjutsu specialist for the village. But what Sarutobi didn't expect was that he had vastly underestimated Yagyu's talents. With such immense chakra reserves, mastery of water release, and even Tobirama's ultimate water release technique. Whether Yagyu was a true senju or not, his innate gifts and mastery of water techniques could turn him into a copy of the second Hokage. Even a replica of Tobirama Senju would grow into a pillar of Konoha. With Naruto and Sasuke eventually coming into their own, Konoha could return to the glory days when the Sunin protected the village. With that future in mind, Sarutobi felt reassured that he wouldn't have to face the former Hokage with shame when his time came. Chapter 55, Yagyu's Envy. Thanks to Yagyu holding back, Niji Hyuga didn't suffer any severe injuries. Under Yagyu's treatment, his pale complexion quickly regained color, though Niji didn't wake up right away, likely due to chakra exhaustion. Hayate summoned medical personnel to take Niji away on a stretcher for rest. Meanwhile, Yagyu returned to the viewing platform. Yagyu, have you perfected that technique? The moment Yagyu rejoined Team 8, Shino Abarame immediately asked. Yeah, Yagyu replied with a smile, nodding. I perfected it a short while ago. As Yagyu had expected, after obtaining the ice release Kekkei Genkai, he not only gained wind chakra but also found it much easier to master wind and water element techniques. With the help of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, Yagyu quickly perfected the water release, spiraling water vortex and the true water release, hard whirlpool water blade. Both of these water release techniques required no hand signs. In all of Konoha, Yagyu's mastery of water release had already reached a level beyond comparison. When he eventually learns or develops more water release techniques, he'll become a master of water release, not only in Konoha but also in the ninja world. With his immense chakra reserves, Yagyu might even be known, like Tobirama Senju, as the man who made a contract with the sea. Or more casually, sea release. At this moment, the screen in the arena, which wasn't damaged by the water, flashed new names. The seventh match, Sakura Harino vs Ino Yamanaka. My opponent is Sakura. Ino looked stunned and unknowingly spoke the truth. What a coincidence. This can't be rigged, can it? Sakura also appeared surprised. Out of the 21 contestants and 10 rounds with one person left out, she happened to be matched with Ino. Amid their teammates' cheers, Sakura and Ino descended to the arena, facing each other. Ino, Sakura, do your best. Yagyu's voice rang through the arena, drawing a lot of attention. Yagyu, like Ino, seemed unconcerned with the looks of others. At some point, he had pulled out a camera, snapping pictures of the scene while cheering for the two girls. Watching this, several jonin twitched their mouths in disbelief. Even Kurane Yui sighed, rubbing her forehead in exasperation. Yagyu was great in every way, but his heart was too fickle. Anyone who wasn't blind could see Hinata's feelings for him. But Yagyu never responded to her and was also incredibly close to the other two girls. What's more outrageous was that Hinata didn't seem jealous at all. She got along wonderfully with those two girls, and it wasn't fake. It was nothing like the drama-filled situations when girls in their youth had fought over Kakashi Hatake. Had the times changed? Asuma Sarutobi, meanwhile, had a sudden realization. Could Yagyu's success be attributed to his thick skin? Yagyu, watch me shine. Ino flashed a toothy grin, giving Yagyu a thumbs up. Sakura also smiled sweetly and gave Ino a peace sign, playfully warning, Ino, don't go easy on me, okay? If you lose, don't start crying, Ino teased, before forming the opposing seal. Whiz, whiz, whiz. The two girls pulled 3 shuriken from their pouches and threw them at each other, launching a battle that resembled the original series but with much higher quality. Over the years, they had sparred countless times in hand-to-hand combat, with each winning some and losing others. But this was their first real match without restrictions. Sakura, aware that Ino had already mastered her family's secret techniques, stayed on guard with her sensory abilities, giving Ino no chance to use her jutsu. Currently, Ino had only mastered the mind transfer jutsu, so she couldn't overpower Sakura, unlike in the original where she succeeded because Sakura lacked sensory skills. Now, they could only rely on their basics. The girls continuously threw ninja tools, occasionally using smoke bombs while employing the body replacement jutsu and body flicker jutsu to feint and evade, leaving spectators like Taku and Yumiko slack-jawed. Who knew academy basics could be used like this? Even the Jonin didn't find the battle boring, instead, they watched with admiration. To have such strong fundamentals at their age was a kind of talent in itself. Both girls displayed excellent chakra control, making them ideal candidates for medical ninjutsu and sealing techniques. It was now clear that Ino would likely rise to a significant position in the interrogation department in the future. After running out of ninja tools, Ino and Sakura engaged in close combat, their rich battle experience once again impressing many. After countless exchanges, a fatigued Sakura finally collapsed, allowing a similarly exhausted Ino to pin her down. The match is over, and the winner is Ino Yamanaka. Hayate announced the result while glancing at his pocket watch. This match had lasted the longest so far. Whiz! Yagyu, who had captured every moment of the fight and used several rolls of film, suddenly appeared in the arena. He picked up the tired and messy Sakura and Ino, one in each arm, and quickly returned to the viewing platform to heal them. The elimination matches continued. The 8th match, Naruto Uzumaki vs Kaiba in Yazuka. Awesome, my opponent is Kaiba. I'm definitely going to win. What, that's my line. Naruto's joyous shout echoed, responding almost directly to Taku's earlier lament and instantly annoying Kaiba. There was no doubt Naruto, the chosen one, was incredibly lucky. Because at this point, Naruto was genuinely weak. After being hit with the 5 elements seal, all he could use was the multi-shadow clone jutsu. He had a massive amount of chakra but no powerful techniques to utilize it. If his opponent had been Shino Abarame, Kankuro, or Temari, Naruto would have definitely lost. Even against Kaiba, the fight was tough. His shadow clones were like fragile balloons, but, just like in the original, Naruto sealed Kaiba's sense of smell with a fart, dealing him an unexpectedly large blow, and ultimately used a variation of Sasuke's lion barrage, called Naruto Uzumaki barrage, to defeat him. Winning in such a comical fashion, Naruto had relied heavily on luck. But no one could predict that in a month's time, the same Naruto, who had to rely on luck to beat Kaiba, would become strong enough to take down the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Had Yagyu not already beaten Neji, Naruto might have made his name by defeating the former top student of the previous year. Such is the life of someone blessed by fate. Sometimes they stagnate for a while, and then, all of a sudden, they skyrocket, their strength growing exponentially. With Naruto and Kaiba's match concluded, the fight Yagyu had been eagerly anticipating finally arrived. The 9th match, Gaara vs Rock Lee. Before Naruto and Sasuke's reincarnations began to take effect, and before the final battle at the Valley of the End, who was the strongest among the Konoha 12? The answer would undoubtedly be Rock Lee. Earlier, Might Guy had shattered Yagyu's hard whirlpool water blade with a single kick using the 8 Gates' fifth gate, Gate of Limit. In this state, chakra turns into a green aura, and the user's speed becomes so fast that they can essentially run on air, similar to the moonwalk technique from the One Piece world. And when Lee used the fifth gate to unleash the reverse lotus, its power surpassed that of some S-rank jutsu. Just as Yagyu envied the multi-shadow clone jutsu, he also deeply envied the 8 gates. He could only imagine the sheer power boost he would gain if he, with his sage-like body, were to open the gates. Chapter 56, Lee's Changed Fate. Just like in the original story, Rock Lee's initial attacks couldn't break through Gaara's automatically defending sand. Other than Team Guy and Team 7, no one had much regard for this genin who could only use taijutsu, lacking both ninjutsu and genjutsu. However, when Lee removed his weighted gear, smashing the ground and kicking up huge clouds of dust, all those who had doubted him were left utterly speechless. Naruto, in particular, was shocked into silence. If Sasuke Uchiha had been there, his reaction likely wouldn't have been much different from Naruto's. Sasuke had been easily defeated by Lee at the Chunin exams building, and both he and Naruto had considered Lee one of their biggest threats in the exam. They had no idea that Lee had been wearing such heavy weights. The thought of Lee being able to move at such incredible speeds even Sasuke's Sharingan could barely track, while wearing those weights, made Naruto's scalp tingle. Sure enough, when Lee removed his weights and launched another attack on Gaara, his speed was so fast that 1 second he was in front of you, the next behind you, and in another moment, above your head. If not for the sharp, piercing sound of him cutting through the air as he moved, everyone might have thought Lee was using space-time jutsu instead of the body flicker technique. Bang! After several rapid movements, Lee finally broke through Gaara's sand defense, landing a punch squarely on Gaara's face. Cracks spread across Gaara's face, stunning Kankuro and Temari, who were watching from the stands. As pieces of clay crumbled away, the sinister expression hidden beneath Gaara's sand armor was revealed. This was the first time in Gaara's life that someone had managed to break through his sand armor. The casual disdain he'd been feeling instantly transformed into excitement and bloodlust. This village is full of people worth killing. Gaara became serious. As his sand pursued Lee, the latter continuously repositioned, searching for an opening to deliver a decisive blow. Soon, Lee found what he believed was Gaara's weak point and executed the front lotus. Unfortunately, what he thought would be a finishing move failed, leaving him exhausted. Determined to prove himself and desperate for victory, Lee opened the first of the 8 gates, neutralizing the side effects of the front lotus and regaining his previous speed, once again putting Gaara on the defensive. This time, Gaara had no way to fight back. Third gate, Gate of Life open. Fourth gate, Gate of Pain open. Lee's speed and strength continued to increase. The arena floor cracked as Lee's movements became so fast that he left trails of dust and debris in his wake. In just a few blinks of an eye, thick dust clouds filled the entire arena. Kakashi Hatake, usually relaxed, looked on in shock, his Sharingan barely able to track Lee's movements as a blur. How could someone his age open this many gates? What kind of brutal training did his body endure to withstand this level of chakra flow? Yagyu, too, felt heavy-hearted. His own weaknesses had been speed and defense, and the opponents he feared most were either incredibly fast or highly resilient. Rock Lee was a prime example of someone who could counter Yagyu. If Yagyu had been Gaara in this situation, his only options would be to use the hiding in mist technique or illusionary techniques to obscure Lee's vision or create a lake to slow Lee down. Otherwise, his fate would likely be similar to Gaara's. At this point, Li's chakra had become so wild that it granted him immunity to genjutsu. Normal illusions wouldn't work on Li in this state. As Li opened more gates, his chakra would become so violent that even strong genjutsu would fail against him. That's why, against someone like Might Guy who had opened the 8 gates, even Madara Uchiha needed the truth-seeking balls, which embodied the fusion of yin-yang release, to counter him. Li's current speed was one of the reasons Yagyu envied the 8 gates technique so much. Just opening the first gate would unlock 100% of his body's physical potential, maximizing both offense and speed, and even with just the first gate open, Yagyu could still use ninjutsu. Before obtaining absolute defense, using the higher gates could allow Yagyu to either escape from a stronger enemy or, alternatively, turn the tables and defeat them. Even the dynamic vision of the Sharingan could only capture Li as an afterimage. For everyone else, their minds were blank, leaving them speechless. Boom! A loud explosion sent Gaara's body flying into the air. A figure bathed in green energy followed closely behind, running through the air as if it were solid ground, treating Gaara like a soccer ball and kicking him around. 5th gate, Gate of Limit open. After a series of rapid kicks, Li, his eyes now all white, his skin flushed red, and veins bulging, forced his aching body to open another gate. The green energy around him intensified, turning into a raging aura. Then, Li ended his assault, his fist cloaked in a powerful air current, preparing to slam into Gaara. Crack! Just as he was about to strike, the sound of bones breaking echoed faintly, causing Li to pause momentarily. But even with the intense pain, Li pushed through, delivering a powerful punch and knee to Gaara's body. Reverse Lotus. Boom! With a deafening explosion, a shadow fell to the ground, and the entire arena shook as if it were about to collapse. Dust filled the air, and the violent shockwave knocked Taku and Yumiko off their feet. Even the weakened Sakura and Ino were nearly thrown off the stands, only saved by Yagyu grabbing them just in time. As the dust lingered, both Genin and Jonin alike stared in disbelief. They had thought Yagyu's S-rank water release was already astonishing enough. But they hadn't expected that, besides Yagyu, who was clearly a future master of water release, there was also someone like Li in this year's batch. The ground-shattering impact was even more spectacular than Yagyu's water vortex. As the dust settled, Gaara and Li's figures became visible. Gaara lay on the ground, barely able to move, only his hand twitching. It was the first time Kankuro and Temari had seen him in such a vulnerable state. Not far away, Li was also sitting on the ground, completely exhausted. By all accounts, the match should have ended in a draw. But then Gaara slowly raised his hand, and the sand from his gourd snaked toward Li like a serpent. Seeing this, the barely conscious Li tried to move away. But his body, too weak to stand, could only squirm backward like a worm. "Guy-sensei, are you going to let his ninja career end here?" Yagyu's voice suddenly rang out. His fingers twitched, and blue chakra flared around him, as if he were ready to intervene. Hearing this, the conflicted Might Guy immediately steeled his resolve. In a flash, he appeared in front of Li, dispersing Gaara's approaching sand with a wave of his hand. "We forfeit," Guy declared to Hayate-gek. "Guy-sensei." Li's blurry vision followed Guy's back. Before he could utter a "sorry for disappointing you," he collapsed into unconsciousness. "You did well, Li. I'm proud of you," Guy said softly as he carried his unconscious student. Seeing this, Yagyu smiled. He deeply admired the relationship between Guy and Li. As comrades, they were the most reliable allies, willing to sacrifice themselves for their teammates at the last moment. That's why Yagyu didn't want Lee to end up losing an arm and a leg, as he had in the original series. Though Lee would eventually recover from those injuries, nothing could compare to keeping his original limbs. The slow pace of Lee's future growth could very well have been due to the lasting effects of those injuries. Now, by changing Lee's fate, Yagyu had simply done a good deed as someone who had crossed over from another world. Watching Yagyu's contented expression, Hiruzen Sarutobi felt even more elated. Not only did Yagyu's physical abilities and water release skills resemble Tobirama's, but his personality was also similar to Hashirama's. No doubt about it, Yagyu was a perfect inheritor of the will of fire, a true descendant of the Senju. Chapter 57, Yagyu, I ended Boruto. After Might Guy left with Rock Lee and Kankuro came to take Gaara away, the high-hanging screen flashed with the final match-up for the 10th and last duel. Temari vs Tenten. Hey! Shikamaru, I seem to have gotten a bye, Koji remarked. Yeah, congratulations, Shikamaru replied dryly. I'll ask my dad for a reward when we get home, Koji said cheerfully. I suggest you don't, Shikamaru said, rolling his eyes. Besides us, Team 8 also passed completely. We'll probably face one of them in the third exam, and we're no match for them. It'd be embarrassing to lose. That's why I should ask my dad for a reward now so I can bribe Yagyu and the others later, Koji responded. Koji, you... Shikamaru was momentarily stunned by Koji's unexpected wisdom. Meanwhile, the fight between Temari and Tenten had already begun. Watching Tenten unleash a barrage of weapons from her storage scrolls, attacking Temari from a distance, Yagyu couldn't help but feel some sympathy. This sympathy was not only for Tenten but also for Team Guy as a whole. If it were a 3v3 match and they gave it their all, Team Guy would undoubtedly be the strongest team in this Chunin exam. Yagyu didn't fear Gaara because his water-style jutsu and genjutsu could counter him. However, Lee's speed and 8 gates techniques could just as easily counter Yagyu's genjutsu and most of his ninjutsu. In a team battle, Team Guy would definitely rank at least second, if not first. But unfortunately, this was a solo competition, and Team Guy drew some of the worst possible opponents. Niji was defeated by Yagyu in an instant, Lee was almost crippled by Gaara, and now Tenten had to face Temari, who specialized in wind-style jutsu. Despite being the most well-rounded team, they became the only one of the 4 teams to face complete elimination. Such bad luck could only be described as unbelievably unfortunate. As expected, Temari defeated Tenten with just 3 swings of her fan. Tenten's impressive number of weapons and impeccable throwing technique didn't manage to scratch Temari, and she almost got injured by the weapons being blown back at her. It was one of the rare, utterly one-sided matches. With Temari's victory, the elimination rounds officially concluded. Out of the 10 matches and 1 bye, 11 genin advanced to the third stage of the exam: Suzuki Uchiha, Shino Abarame, Hinata Hyuga, Kankuro, Shikamaru Nara, Yagyu, Ino Yamanaka, Naruto Uzumaki, Gaara, Temari, and Koji Akimichi. Of the 11 participants, 8 were from Konoha, and 3 were from Sunagakure. The third stage of the exam would not only be an internal competition for Konoha but also a contest between the new generations of Konoha and Sunagakure. Hiruzen Sarutobi descended from the stands with Anko Mitarashi, the proctor of the second exam, holding a box. The remaining genin would now draw lots to determine their opponents for the official matches of the third stage. He also informed them of the date of the final exam. The third stage was a major event that would attract many wealthy and noble spectators, as well as many civilians from the Land of Fire and neighboring countries. Therefore, a lengthy preparation time was necessary. Additionally, to give the participants time to improve themselves, the third stage was scheduled to start a month later at 10:30 am. The participants began drawing lots. Since Sasuke Uchiha was still bedridden, he would automatically take the last spot. Shino drew number 9. Hinata drew number 5. Yagyu drew number 3. Once everyone had finished drawing, Anko quickly organized the match UPS for the final stage. Like the elimination round, there would be one participant who received a bye due to the odd number of contestants. The match UPS were as follows: 1 Naruto Uzumaki vs 2 Koji Akimichi, 3 Yagyu vs 4 Shikamaru Nara, 5 Hinata Hyuga vs 6 Ino Yamanaka, 7 Gaara vs 8 Sasuke Uchiha, 9 Shino Abarame vs 10 Kankuro. By Temari. Seeing the match UPS, Yagyu was taken aback. "My opponent is Yagyu, what a drag!" Shikamaru muttered, scratching his head in frustration. Standing nearby, Yagyu overheard Shikamaru's words and glanced at him with a fleeting look of pity. "Facing me isn't the worst part. What's really tragic is that you'll lose your future wife." "Wah!" Suddenly, Yagyu's mouth twitched as he whispered two words that only Hinata could hear, though she didn't understand them. Yagyu realized he had just achieved something remarkable. He had ended Boruto. Hinata didn't like Naruto, Sakura didn't like Sasuke, and Ino was nowhere near Sai. Now, Shikamaru had missed his chance to impress Temari, too. Which meant the future would no longer see Boruto Uzumaki, Himawari Uzumaki, Sarada Uchiha, Shikade Nara, or Inajin Yamanaka. And more importantly, no more Boruto, Naruto next generations. After announcing the match UPS and the exam date, Hiruzen dismissed the group, and the Jounin left the tower together. Yagyu and his companions also departed with their respective instructors. By the time they left the Forest of Death, it was already dusk. As promised, Kurane treated her team to a feast. "Hinata, Shino, see you in a month," Yagyu said as they parted ways at a crossroads after dinner. For the next month, they wouldn't be seeing each other much. The third stage was where family honor was truly on the line, and Hinata's father, Hayashi, who wasn't disappointed in her, along with Shino's clan, would undoubtedly attend to watch. To ensure they didn't embarrass their families, the next month would be filled with hellish training. During this time, Yagyu also had many things to accomplish. Even if he had free time, he wouldn't be seeking out Hinata, Ino, or Sakura. Lee's performance had put rare pressure on Yagyu. Back when Yagyu had only read the manga and watched the anime, he had been incredibly impressed. Now, witnessing it firsthand, the shock was even greater. That kind of speed where even if you could sense it or see it coming, your body couldn't react was terrifying just to think about. Lee's display showed what it truly meant to be invincible and unstoppable. What was more frightening was that in the ninja world, there were many others even faster than Lee. Yagyu realized that before he worried about his weak defense, he needed to focus on boosting his speed to its current maximum. If he could improve his speed, weaker defense wouldn't matter as much unless he faced some massive AoE attack. He could likely escape most dangerous situations. Chapter 58, Kagura Mind Si, the True New Generation Sunin. For the next few days, Yagyu was never home, spending all his time training at a secluded waterfall. During this time, the only one who visited Yagyu's home was Sakura. As for Hinata and Ino, they had likely started their hellish training. After using Sakura to create the illusion that he was out training, Yagyu quietly left a sign at his door that read, "Out training, leave a message if needed," and then slipped out of Konoha. In just over 2 hours, Yagyu arrived at the short road town in the Land of Fire. As soon as Yagyu entered the town, he activated his red eye vision and farsight abilities to locate Karin. However, something seemed to catch his attention, and his eyebrows raised slightly in surprise. A few seconds later, Yagyu's eyes lit up as he muttered, "Could it be that ability has awakened? The timing seems to match up." So, Yagyu stood still, as if waiting for something, or perhaps confirming something. "Yagyu-kun." Soon, a girl's excited voice rang in Yagyu's ears. Turning towards the sound, Yagyu saw a red-haired girl running toward him. Seeing Karin approach, Yagyu's suspicions were confirmed. However, when she reached him, he pretended to be surprised and asked, "Karin, how did you know I was coming?" "Hehe, because I sensed your chakra, Yagyu-kun." Karin blushed, looking at Yagyu with a smile of pure admiration and excitement. "Your chakra is so strong, like the sun itself so bright. When did you learn sensory techniques?" "I didn't actually learn any sensory techniques. The grass village only gave me basic ninjutsu scrolls. They never taught us outsiders anything more." As they walked to her place, Karin explained, "Recently, whenever I close my eyes, I can sense the chakra of people nearby. And the range seems to be growing. Just now, I suddenly sensed an enormous chakra, and Yagyu-kun's unique presence appeared in my mind, as if I could see it with my heart." What Karin didn't say was that she had been worried Yagyu wouldn't come for her. Every day, she wandered near the town entrance, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. At night, she reluctantly returned to her place, fearing he might arrive and not find her. Then, one morning, Karin woke up and realized she could sense other people's chakra. Even with her eyes closed, she could see the chakra around her, and when she focused, the features of those chakras' owners would vaguely appear. A sudden awakening of sensory abilities. Really? Yagyu pretended to be amazed. Karin nodded, and Yagyu reached out to pat her head, saying, "Amazing. Not only do you have healing abilities, but now you've also awakened the Kagura Mind's Eye. You truly are a descendant of the Uzumaki clan." Kagura Mind's Eye. Karin, enjoying Yagyu's touch, tilted her head in confusion. Yagyu explained, "Just as the Uchiha clan has the Sharingan and excels at fire release and genjutsu, and the Hyuga clan has the Byakugan and excels at gentle fist, the Uzumaki clan, once one of the most powerful in the ninja world, also had unique abilities. Besides their expertise in sealing techniques, the Uzumaki possessed several distinct powers. These powers include healing through physical touch, sensory abilities like the Kagura Mind's Eye, and sealing techniques such as the adamantine chains. These abilities could only be awakened by a select few prodigies within the Uzumaki clan, and only by those with red hair." As Yagyu explained, he couldn't help but feel pity for Karin's fate in the original story. She had awakened all of the Uzumaki's rare abilities, something not even all members of the clan could achieve. Such talent would have made Karin a once-in-a-generation prodigy of the Uzumaki clan. If the clan hadn't been destroyed, she could have been the next great Uzumaki like Mito Uzumaki of old. If Karin had encountered Tsunade instead of Orochimaru while wandering after leaving Konoha, and had been trained by her learning Tsunade's strength and medical ninjutsu, along with the sealing techniques left behind by Mito, Karin could have been one of the true new generation Sunin. That was the reason Yagyu had suggested Karin stay in the short road town. He was waiting for Tsunade. The short road town was where Tsunade first appeared in the story and where the Sunin reunited. If Karin was to join Konoha, it had to be through Tsunade. Only with Tsunade's sponsorship would Danzo not dare make any moves against Karin. Otherwise, Danzo would almost certainly target her 100% guaranteed. The Uzumaki clan members were ideal vessels for Jinchuriki, and if Karin awakened her adamantine chains, she would be able to control tailed beasts, just like the Sharingan could. If Danzo got his hands on Karin, he would likely target Naruto next. And if something happened to both Jiraiya and Tsunade, there would be no one left to protect Naruto. Danzo would definitely make his move. That's why Yagyu needed to ensure Karin connected with Tsunade. With Tsunade backing her, Karin could potentially become the strongest version of herself. And when that happened, Yagyu would have a loyal ally far stronger than both Haku and Kimimaro. I see, Karin, oblivious to Yagyu's plans for her, nodded, her heart filling with joy and excitement. Now that she had this ability, she could help Yagyu. And if she could awaken the adamantine chains, she would become an even more valuable tool for him. The thought of being needed and used by her Prince Charming made Karin grin foolishly. Yagyu had no idea what Karin was thinking. Seeing her face light up with a lovesick smile, he patted her head again and said, "The final Chunin exam is in a month. I'll stay here in the short road town to train and also teach you some ninjutsu." Really? Karin's eyes sparkled with excitement. Yagyu nodded with a smile. If you want to join Konoha, you'll need to become stronger. So, get ready for some tough training. I won't let you down, Yagyu-kun. Karin nodded eagerly. This was her chance to prove her worth, and no matter how hard it was, she would push through. For the girl who had emerged from the darkness, her greatest fear wasn't death, it was disappointing the person who had pulled her from the abyss, losing the light that had redeemed her. Just like Haku with Zabuza, or Kimimaro with Orochimaru. Chapter 59, Kakashi's favoritism and Yagyu's anticipation. For most of the following month, Yagyu stayed in the short road town, training and teaching Karin some ninjutsu. Coincidentally, Karin's chakra nature, like Yagyu's before graduation and also like Sakura's, consisted of yin, yang, water, and earth. Because of this, if Karin had been developed properly, she could have rivaled Naruto and Sasuke in strength, at least before they ascended to their Super Kage level. While Sakura was impressive, she still paled in comparison to Karin, who had direct connections to the Tsutsuki lineage. During this period, Yagyu not only taught Karin his water release techniques but also took her to various gambling dens in the short road town using transformation jutsu, in order to milk the sheep and provide her with proper nourishment. Thanks to this period of rest and proper nutrition during her growth phase, now free from having her chakra drained, Karin's arms no longer bore any bite marks, her skin wasn't as pale, and her hair regained its vitality. Her chakra levels were now befitting someone of the Uzumaki clan. Though her chakra still paled in comparison to Yagyu's or Naruto's, she would certainly catch up in a few years and become a powerhouse in her own right. During their time together, Yagyu would spar with Karin, using clones whose chakra levels matched or were slightly lower than hers. Through these daily training sessions, Yagyu successfully extracted the Uzumaki clan's physical healing and Kagura Mind's Eye abilities from Karin. Both abilities manifested as blue orbs in Yagyu's mind. Though not red in his system, these abilities were still more useful than many red-tiered ones. Physical healing allowed for healing both others and oneself, essentially a weaker version of healing without hand seals. Kagura Mind's Eye was even more impressive, being one of the strongest sensory techniques in the ninja world, with the sensing range extending for tens of kilometers. With these, along with his Byakugan and his Red Eye abilities, Yagyu now had 3 different sensory techniques, granting him the power of X-ray vision, far sight, and super long-range detection. In terms of sensory abilities, Yagyu had become one of the strongest in the ninja world. August 6, Konoha Year 60, 3 p.m. Karin, I'm heading back now. Standing at the door of a small apartment, Yagyu said his goodbyes. Don't slack off on your training while I'm gone. I'll come back for you in a few days. Take care, Yagyu-kun, Karin responded obediently, nodding her head. Yagyu patted her head affectionately, ruffling her now smooth red hair before vanishing with a smile. In less than 2 hours, Yagyu had returned to Konoha from the short road town. Upon reaching his home, he noticed a note left by Sakura at the entrance. The note explained how, after the Forest of Death incident, Sakura had realized her own weaknesses and sought Kakashi's guidance in learning new ninjutsu. In response, Kakashi recommended that she intern at Konoha Hospital. Once she proved herself there, Kakashi would apply for her to learn advanced medical and offensive medical ninjutsu techniques. For the past month, Sakura had been working as an intern at the hospital, assisting the medical ninjas. Reading the note, Yagyu felt happy for Sakura but couldn't help shaking his head. His thoughts turned to Naruto. No doubt, a month ago, Naruto must have begged Kakashi to teach him new techniques. Instead, Kakashi had likely handed him off to a special jonin, Ebisu, who was also Konohamaru's tutor. Kakashi had told Naruto he didn't have time to train him because he needed to teach Sasuke the taijutsu he copied from Rock Lee, as well as the technique of stimulating speed through lightning release chakra and his own signature move, Chidori. While Kakashi completely dedicated himself to training Sasuke, he casually pawned Naruto off to a special jonin he knew Naruto couldn't stand. Kakashi's favoritism was blatant. Looking at the original story in both the Naruto and Shippuden arcs, Kakashi taught Naruto only 2 things. The first was how to climb trees using chakra, and the second, with Yamato's assistance, was the incomplete wind release, Rasen Shuriken. Yagyu found it hard to understand why Kakashi, who had tested Naruto's chakra nature and had mastered over 1,000 jutsu, didn't even teach Naruto any wind release techniques, despite Naruto not being able to learn Chidori. Even if Kakashi didn't favor Naruto, he should have at least taught him something more. But Kakashi's lack of guidance was more baffling considering that Naruto was the son of his former teacher, the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Although Kakashi had been emotionally troubled during Naruto's early years, it was surprising how half-hearted his guidance remained even when Naruto needed him the most. This flaw in Kakashi's character was significant, and it was why, despite his abundant screen time, Kakashi never quite reached the same status as mentors like Jiraiya or even Iruka, who had far less screen time. Fortunately, by this point, Jiraiya had returned to the village. Otherwise, under the effects of the 5 Elements seal, Naruto might not have even been able to defeat Koji in the final exam. After all, the human boulder technique and the multi-size technique were still quite powerful. Thinking about his plans, Yagyu felt excited about what was to come. Sarutobi Hiruzen's era was about to end, and Tsunade's era was about to begin. Soon, it would be Yagyu's stage. The next day, 10 a.m. In the bathroom, Yagyu was getting ready. His usual outfit consisted of a black cloak, white shirt, black pants, and boots. After putting on gloves with metal plates and securing his ninja tools, he placed his colored contact lenses into his eyes. He then took out a black cloak and a white mask from his spatial storage. After making the necessary preparations, Yagyu formed a seal with one hand and summoned a shadow clone in a puff of smoke. Yagyu left the bathroom, exited his house, and made his way to the vast square in the center of Konoha. Along the way, he saw many carriages and unfamiliar faces heading in the same direction. The sky was lit up by colorful fireworks, a celebratory atmosphere filling the air. Before long, Yagyu arrived at the square. After confirming his identity at the entrance reserved for participants, he made his way inside. Hinata and Ino were already there. "Yagyu, over here!" Ino waved enthusiastically. Before Yagyu could respond, he felt a chill down his spine. Such intense killing intent. Yagyu's peripheral vision caught a glimpse of the audience seating area. He immediately knew who it was. The killing intent wasn't an illusion. It was yin chakra, transmitting someone's emotions directly to Yagyu. He didn't need to guess this was Yamanaka Inoichi, Ino's father and the head of the current generation's Inoshikacho trio. With the entire Inoshikacho trio present, it was only natural that their families would attend. Yagyu, realizing that he was probably being scrutinized by two clan leaders, straightened up and nodded politely to Ino, making his way over to Shikamaru. Feeling any pressure, Shikamaru teased. Yagyu glanced at him and smirked. I don't know about me, but you'll definitely be feeling the pressure soon enough. Hey, don't be so petty, Shikamaru's smile faltered, and he quickly added, my dad's watching from the stands, so could you at least make sure I don't lose too badly? Too late. I hold grudges, and I plan to turn you from a deer into a pig, Yagyu joked, a mischievous grin forming on his face. Chapter 60, The Strength of Chiakimichi. Time flew by, and with only 2 minutes left until 10:30 am, all of the 11 participants had gathered except for Naruto and Sasuke. Ah! Just as the countdown began, a sudden shout echoed through the air. Naruto, being chased by a herd of bulls, frantically stumbled into the arena, face planting onto the ground. This sight caused Nara, Shikamaru and others, along with many in the audience, to react with visible frustration, their faces full of exasperation. Even Yagyu couldn't help but sigh internally, thinking, as expected from the most unpredictable ninja. Once Naruto had joined the lineup, Genma Shiranui, the proctor for the third exam, chewed on a senbon, glanced at his pocket watch, and then looked toward the VIP section. Seeing that both the third Hokage and the fourth Kazekage had arrived, Genma addressed the 10 participants in front of him. The final round of the Chunin exams is about to begin. I am the proctor for this round, Genma Shiranui. The rules for this match are the same as the previous round, no restrictions. You can use any techniques or strategies you want. I'd also like to remind you that if your life is at risk, don't hesitate to surrender. Because unlike other proctors, I might not intervene in time to save you, even if you surrender. If you delay, I might not be able to save you in time. After giving his warning, Genma pulled out a chart and continued, the first match will be between Naruto Uzumaki, who drew number 1, and Chiakimichi, who drew number 2. The rest of you, please head to the waiting area. Naruto exclaimed, leaning out to glance at Yagyu and the others before turning to Genma, looking flustered. Proctor, Sasuke isn't here yet. Whether Sasuke shows up or not is none of my concern, Genma replied flatly. If his match comes up and he's not here, he'll be disqualified for forfeiting. Instead of worrying about others, you'd better focus on your own match. Soon, the arena was left with just Naruto, Chi, and Genma. Naruto, you should just surrender, Chi said kindly, munching on a bag of chips. You're not strong enough to beat me. Hearing this infuriated Naruto. Pointing at Chi, he shouted, you're the one who's going down, you fat pig. Watch me wipe the floor with you. As soon as Naruto spat out the words fat pig, the atmosphere shifted. Chi, usually calm and kind-hearted, suddenly narrowed his eyes, his gaze turning sharp. I'm mad now, Naruto, Chi growled. Naruto, surprised by the sudden change, nervously retorted, bring it on. I'm not scared of you. Sensing the rising tension between the two, Genma took a few steps back and raised his hand. The first match of the third round of the Chunin exams, Naruto Uzumaki vs Chiakimichi, begins now. Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. Unlike most genin who start with cautious attacks, Naruto immediately crossed his fingers into a familiar hand sign and summoned a large group of shadow clones. Boom 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 boom. A series of popping sounds filled the air as dozens of Naruto clones materialized, white smoke swirling around them. The audience, especially the experienced ninja, widened their eyes in shock. That's the forbidden multi-shadow clone jutsu. How much chakra does this kid have to summon so many clones so easily? All right, let's get him. One of the Naruto clones yelled, and the crowd of clones charged at Chiji. While the sight of so many clones was intimidating, Chiji remained calm. He casually put away his bag of chips, cracked his knuckles, and with a powerful leap, his body ballooned like a giant, his head and limbs retracting as blue chakra flared around him. He began spinning rapidly in the air. Human bullet tank. As soon as Chiji hit the ground, he rolled forward at incredible speed, plowing through Naruto's clones. The clones barely had time to react before they were smashed into clouds of white smoke, one after another. The ball continued to roll wildly around the arena, smashing through most of Naruto's clones in mere moments. Gulp! Naruto swallowed nervously as the feedback from his destroyed clones returned to him. Whoa! I had no idea Chiji was this strong. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. After Chiji stopped rolling and reverted to his normal size, Naruto summoned more clones, crossing his fingers into the jutsu sign once again. With only the shadow clone jutsu and his unreliable summoning jutsu, Naruto had few options for attacking. This time, he summoned over 100 clones, once again rushing toward Chiji. Chiji, however, remained unfazed. He quickly tied several kunai together with steel wire, wrapping them around himself before jumping back into the air and transforming once again into a giant spinning ball. Spiked human bullet tank. The enhanced version of his previous attack tore through Naruto's new wave of clones just as effectively, leaving only clouds of white smoke behind. Naruto, meanwhile, could only barely dodge the attacks. Damn it! I can't even get close to him. Naruto muttered, frustrated, as he watched the rolling ball plow through his clones. He considered whether or not to tap into the Nine Tails chakra, but just then, something caught his attention. The giant ball of flesh stopped rolling. Panting heavily, Chiji had reverted to his normal state, his breathing labored either from chakra exhaustion or the prolonged spinning. Seizing the opportunity, Naruto quickly formed the familiar hand sign again. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. A new wave of shadow clones materialized, and once again, they charged toward Chiji. Seeing the new onslaught of clones, Chiji didn't resort to his previous technique. Instead, he shouted, "Partial expansion jutsu." His arms and legs swelled to enormous sizes, stretching out like a giant's limbs, and with a series of punches and kicks, he obliterated the oncoming clones, turning them into clouds of smoke. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Naruto shouted again. Before the smoke from the previous batch of clones could even clear, a fresh wave of shadow clones filled the arena. Naruto had figured out that Chiji's chakra reserves were far inferior to his own and that Chiji had no long-range attacks. He planned to overwhelm him by exhausting his chakra reserves. For a moment, it looked like Naruto's strategy might work, as Chiji seemed to be at a disadvantage. Chiji's in trouble. If this keeps up, he might lose, Ino commented from the sidelines. No, he won't, Shikamaru's calm voice responded. Leaning on the railing, Shikamaru confidently said, Chiji is stronger than all of us. He's way more powerful than he looks. Almost as if to confirm Shikamaru's words, Chiji finally spotted Naruto's real body hiding behind his clones and the lingering smoke. Glancing briefly toward the audience, Chiji's eyes seemed to meet those of his father. With renewed determination, Chiji reached into his pouch and pulled out a transparent box containing 3 differently colored pills. He took the green pill one made from vegetables and tossed it into his mouth. Boom! A burst of blue chakra erupted from Chiji's body as years of stored fat instantly began burning away, releasing a massive amount of energy. In an instant, Chiji vanished from sight. When he reappeared, he was right in front of the real Naruto, who stood wide-eyed in shock. With his hand enveloped in blue chakra, Chiji slammed his palm into Naruto's chest. Super open hand slam. In the blink of an eye, Naruto was sent flying like an arrow shot from a bow, his body becoming a blur as it soared through the air. Chiji's increased strength was so great that Naruto was hurled tens of meters before hitting the ground and tumbling across the dirt. The sudden reversal of the fight left the audience in stunned silence. Except for Shikamaru and Yagyu, who weren't surprised at all. They both knew Chiji's true strength. After all, in the Inoshika CH trio, the Akimichi clan was the powerhouse. When powered up with pills, the Akimichi were like unstoppable tanks. Their ultimate transformation, butterfly mode, was just as terrifying as the 8 gates technique. In the original story arc where they pursued Sasuke, Chiji and Neji were the only ones who managed to take down members of the Sound Four by themselves. Chapter 61, Honorable Defeat, Hayashi Hyga's Expectations. Cough, cough. Ugh. Naruto, who had rolled across the ground after being knocked back, coughed and gagged, struggling to regain his breath. Fortunately, he had only eaten a bit of ramen earlier, most of which had already been digested. Otherwise, he might have thrown up his breakfast. If not for his strong sage body and being the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails, with incredible durability, Naruto could have easily been knocked out by Chichiya Kimika's blow. Even now, the pain in his body was overwhelming, preventing him from standing up immediately. However, seeing Chichi approaching with a pressure completely different from his usual demeanor, Naruto gritted his teeth and forced himself to his feet. He quickly formed hand seals, closing his eyes and shouting inwardly, "You stupid fox, it's time to pay your rent." Whoosh! As if responding to Naruto's call, within the mental space shared by the Jinchuriki and the tailed beast, the 9 tails suddenly opened its red, slit pupil eyes from within its cage. In the real world, red chakra began surging from Naruto, swirling around him like a fox's tail. This scene shocked many of the shinobi in the audience. Is that? Both Hiruzen Sarutobi and Orochimaru, disguised as the 4th Kazekage, widened their eyes. Hiruzen was surprised that Naruto had begun to harness the 9 tails chakra, while Orochimaru was startled to realize that the 5-element seal he had placed on Naruto had been removed. Judging by Hiruzen's reaction, it was clear that the old Hokage wasn't responsible for it. Could it be, that idiot has returned thinking of the man who had been pursuing him for years? Orochimaru felt a sinking feeling in his heart. However, when he thought about the stage he had set for Hiruzen, he relaxed a bit. On the field, the battle resumed. Though Naruto hadn't entered the full 9 tails cloak form, the chakra of the 9 tails still caused a massive surge in his power, similar to the effect of Chichi consuming the first of the 3 Akimichi pills. Naruto felt the pain in his body vanish almost instantly, replaced by a newfound, intoxicating strength. He dashed toward Chichi, his body becoming a blur of red, moving at a speed he hadn't possessed before. Chichi rushed forward as well, moving at an equally impressive pace. The 2 colorful blurs, one red, one blue, collided in the center of the arena, and Naruto and Chichi began exchanging punches and kicks in a clumsy, uncoordinated taijutsu fight, full of openings. If the 2 were replaced with any other shinobi of similar strength, someone with more skill could easily suppress and defeat the other. But here, it looked like a fight between two novices at the academy, unrefined and chaotic. However, with the chakra flames surrounding both of them, enhancing their speed and strength, their sloppy brawl felt intense, each blow landing with raw force and passion, creating an exciting spectacle. Unfortunately, it didn't last long before the blue chakra surrounding Chi began to fade. The side effects of the first Akimichi pill kicked in, and he showed a momentary opening. Seizing the chance, Naruto kicked him, sending him flying. Chi skidded across the ground for several meters, sweat pouring from his face as he panted heavily. He reached into his ninja pouch, pulling out the transparent box that contained the remaining 2 pills. Staring at the pills, Chi hesitated. He didn't know where Naruto's sudden surge of chakra came from, but after their brief exchange, he realized that Naruto's newfound strength was only slightly below what Chi had gained from taking the first pill. Naruto's speed was the only clear advantage. If Chi took the second pill, he was confident he could defeat Naruto in a single blow. After consuming the second pill, his power would skyrocket, and he could enlarge his entire body, transforming into a human mountain capable of crushing Naruto flat. But then he remembered his father's teachings and the significance of these 3 pills. Chi took a deep breath, put the box back into his pouch, and turned to Genma Shiranui. "Proctor, I forfeit." "Hey!" Before Genma could announce the result, Naruto's excitement deflated like a balloon. The 9 tails chakra vanished in an instant, and Naruto, stunned, asked, "Chi, why are you giving up? I can't beat you. And I can't bring myself to harm my own friends," Chi thought to himself as he dragged his exhausted body toward the exit of the arena. "The winner of the first match is Naruto Uzumaki," Genma declared, watching Chi's retreating figure with a slight smile before announcing the result loudly. The crowd erupted into applause, cheers echoing through the arena. Spectators from all over the Land of Fire and even neighboring nations were thoroughly impressed with the 2 outstanding genin. The match had been intense and thrilling, and the journey had been well worth it. Even the nobles in the stands took note of Naruto's ability to summon so many clones and Chi's overwhelming power, keeping them in mind for potential future mission requests. "Chise, you have a remarkable son," Narashikaku and Yamanaka Inoichi praised their old friend's son, despite Chi's loss. Like them, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and other Konoha ninjas aware of the significance of the Akimichi clan's 3 pills, deeply appreciated Chi's decision to forfeit. It reminded them of the gentle nature and will of fire embodied by the Akimichi clan. This generation's heir to the butterfly transformation was truly exceptional. Naruto, however, had no idea that Chi had gone easy on him. For the first time, Naruto basked in the cheers of the crowd, waving excitedly to the audience as he ran back toward the waiting area. "Yagyu, you got this. Knock Shikamaru down hard. Hey, I'm standing right next to you, remember we're on the same team. Yagyu-kun, good luck." With cheers of encouragement from Ino and Hinata, Yagyu and Nara Shikamaru walked out from the tunnel and into the spotlight, standing across from each other beside Genma. "Father, is that the boy who's my sister's teammate Hanabi?" Seated next to Hayashi Higa in the audience, curiously asked. "The one who defeated Niji?" "Yes," Hayashi replied, his face expressionless, but his heart was filled with complex emotions. Like Yamanaka Inoichi and Hiruzen Sarutobi, Hayashi had been aware of Yagyu for many years. At first, when Ino frequently visited and invited Hinata to hang out, Hayashi didn't think much of it. But as he noticed that every time Hinata returned, she would head straight to the dojo to train practicing advanced fundamentals only taught to genin, Hayashi grew suspicious. One day, he decided to follow her and discovered Yagyu. As an adult, Hayashi quickly saw through Hinata's growing feelings for Yagyu. However, he didn't stop Hinata from spending time with Yagyu and his friends, as he realized that Yagyu's presence gave Hinata the motivation to train harder. Moreover, Yagyu was a prodigy, a civilian genius who managed to retain the title of top student year after year among an exceptionally gifted generation. His talent and potential were undeniable. If Yagyu's excellence continued to grow, and if Hinata truly loved him, Hayashi wouldn't mind allowing Yagyu to marry into the Hyuga clan. Especially since, as Hanabi grew, Hayashi realized her talent and personality made her a more suitable successor for the Hyuga clan than Hinata. When the time came to make a decision, Hayashi was willing to let Yagyu join the Hyuga clan as a means of compensating his eldest daughter. But Yagyu's recent revelation that he was a descendant of the Senju clan changed everything. Mastering powerful genjutsu and water release techniques at such a young age, Yagyu was like a young version of the second Hokage, Tobirama. This was truly incredible. Such lineage and talent made Yagyu a prime candidate for the future Hokage. If Yagyu became Hokage one day, Hayashi would have the perfect reason to let Hinata marry him, ensuring that neither of his daughters would have to bear the burden of the caged bird seal. Because of this, Hayashi now had high hopes and great expectations for Yagyu. He wasn't here today just to support Hinata, he was here for Yagyu. Chapter 62, The Phantom Body Flicker Technique. Since we've known each other, this seems to be our first time facing off in a match, doesn't it? Yagyu said with a smile, raising 2 fingers in front of him as he faced Nara Shikamaru. Yet. Sorry for not matching up to you sooner. My grades were too poor, Shikamaru replied, scratching his head with one hand while also raising 2 fingers with the other. Upon closer look, his usual lazy, fish-like eyes had sharpened into a serious gaze. Yagyu was the unbeatable final boss. This was a consensus shared by all the students from the 60th class of the Ninja Academy. If it were someone else, Sasuke, Uchiha or Naruto, losing would make them feel incredibly frustrated. But losing to Yagyu, well, even Sasuke and Naruto had gotten used to it over the past 6 years. As one of the first people to realize that Yagyu was hiding his true power, Shikamaru knew very well that he wasn't on Yagyu's level. However, his brain told him that if Yagyu only had those abilities, there might still be a chance for him to win. After all, the Nara clan's shadow imitation technique wasn't to be underestimated. With a field this large, no matter how much chakra Yagyu had or how skilled he was in water release, there was no way he could flood the entire area. As long as Shikamaru could catch him in his shadow, victory would be his. Over the past few days, Shikamaru had been pondering how to trap Yagyu and had come up with more than a dozen plans. Now, it was time to put them into action. Seeing that both had made the seal of confrontation, Genma Shiranui raised his arm again and shouted, "Second round match, Yagyu vs Nara Shikamaru. Begin!" Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Shikamaru immediately jumped back, putting distance between himself and Yagyu. While still in midair, he reached into his ninja pouch, pulling out 3 black spheres and tossing them toward Yagyu. The spheres landed in front of Yagyu and to his left and right, then exploded into clouds of smoke that enveloped him. As soon as he landed, Shikamaru formed hand seals, and black shadows began spreading from his feet, splitting into several snake-like tendrils that slithered quickly toward the smoke. What no one saw was that within the white smoke, a faint red powder briefly appeared before vanishing. Suddenly, 3 Yagyus burst out of the smoke, hands behind their backs in the typical ninja running stance, rushing toward Shikamaru. As the shadows extended toward them, the 3 Yagyus spread out in a fan formation, moving to surround Shikamaru. None of them showed any intent to use water release for a ranged attack. Shikamaru didn't have time to think about why Yagyu wasn't using long-range attacks. Seeing the three Yagyus split up, he immediately directed his shadow toward the closest one directly in front of him. In the next moment, his pupils shrank. He had expected that Yagyu would use a body flicker to dodge the shadow, but instead, Yagyu ignored the encroaching shadow and kept rushing toward him. As Shikamaru started to glance at the other two Yagyus out of the corner of his eye, trying to determine which was the real one, his shadow touched the Yagyu in front of him. But instead of freezing in place or dispersing into a puff of smoke, the shadow passed right through him. Yagyu kept coming. Wait, is this a basic clone technique? Shikamaru raised an eyebrow, surprised that Yagyu would use such a low-level move. But then, his expression shifted. No, this isn't the clone technique, it's an illusion. The clone technique and shadow clone technique are similar, without specialized techniques like the Byakugan or certain sensory skills. It's difficult to tell the two apart with the naked eye. You can figure it out by making contact with them. The clone technique creates illusions that vanish upon contact, much like a mirage in the desert. Shadow clones, on the other hand, are physical and even the Byakugan can't see through them. If this Yagyu was just an illusion clone, it should have disappeared as soon as it was touched by the shadow. But it didn't. It kept running toward Shikamaru. Shikamaru quickly disrupted his chakra flow, trying to break free of Yagyu's illusion. But even after that, Yagyu didn't disappear. He was already in front of Shikamaru, his fist heading straight for his face. In a split-second reaction, Shikamaru cancelled his shadow imitation technique and pulled out a kunao, swinging it at Yagyu. As expected, the kunao and Shikamaru's arm passed right through Yagyu's body. Yet, the illusionary clone didn't vanish, and Yagyu's punch landed squarely on Shikamaru's face. Boom! The force of the punch distorted Shikamaru's face like a wave, showing just how strong Yagyu's blow had been. In the next instant, Shikamaru was sent flying more than 10 meters, crashing to the ground. Lying there, Shikamaru was utterly dumbfounded, his normally sharp mind completely blank. In the audience, many shinobi stood up in astonishment. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi and Orochimaru, disguised as the fourth Kazekage, were visibly shocked, almost rising from their seats. That's the phantom body flicker technique. Seriously, is that really the phantom body flicker? How is this possible? He doesn't have a Sharingan. How could he have mastered the phantom body flicker? Incredible! His skill in both body flicker and genjutsu must be extraordinary to have mastered Shisui's secret technique. The shinobi in the audience were in an uproar, unable to believe what they had just seen. Many younger ninjas and even civilians nearby looked on in confusion, not understanding the significance of what had just happened. But their reactions were understandable, as the Uchiha clan had been wiped out years ago. Everyone knew that during the Third Great Ninja War, two prodigies emerged from the Konoha side. One was Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, whose mastery of the Flying Thunder God technique earned him the moniker the Yellow Flash. The other was Uchiha Shisui, a ninja whose long-distance kills using his unmatched genjutsu could only be spotted from afar by the Byakugan. Shisui earned the title Shisui of the Body Flicker. Just like how Minato was renowned for the Flying Thunder God technique, Shisui's Shisui of the Body Flicker title came from his own invention, the Phantom Body Flicker technique. The concept behind it was simple. Shisui combined the Sharingan's genjutsu with the standard body flicker and clone techniques, but despite its simplicity, no one else in the entire Uchiha clan, or even the larger ninja world, had ever been able to replicate Shisui's technique. The phantom body flicker created one or more illusion clones using the E-rank clone technique, which would attack enemies alongside Shisui himself. Though these clones were mere illusions that should disappear upon contact, Shisui's genjutsu-infused clones didn't vanish. When enemies attacked what they believed to be Shisui's clone and let down their guard, thinking it was just a mirage, Shisui would then use the body flicker to replace the clone, making the phantom clone become his real body. And just as easily, that real body could once again become an illusion. Because of this, Shisui's enemies never knew which form was his real body and were forced to defend against every attack, lest an illusion turn into a lethal blow. Countless people had fallen to Shisui's phantom body flicker technique. With a technique as powerful and terrifying as the Flying Thunder God, Shisui had become renowned throughout the ninja world, becoming the strongest Uchiha of his generation by the time he was only in his teens. But after Shisui's death, the phantom body flicker technique along with the Flying Thunder God became the stuff of legend. Now, seeing this technique reappear was enough to shock any shinobi who knew of Shisui's legacy. Chapter 63, This is just a shadow clone. That's right, Yagyu was using the phantom body flicker technique. After obtaining the Thunder Blade, Kaiba, Yagyu had been using the blade to practice lightning release chakra nature transformation. After more than a month of work, he finally mastered the lightning release chakra stimulation technique, and his speed was now on par with Lee when he took off his weights. At first, Yagyu only intended to increase his speed. But one day, while sparring in an unrestricted match with Karin using shadow clones, he watched his clone use the red eye illusion technique combined with the body flicker technique to toy with Karin. That's when inspiration struck. He thought of Shisui Uchiha's phantom body flicker technique. In Yagyu's eyes, this technique was no less formidable in one-on-one combat than the Flying Thunder God technique or Kamui's intangibility. However, mastering this technique required both exceptional proficiency in illusions and body flicker techniques. Most importantly, the illusion technique needed to be one that didn't require hand seals. After mastering the lightning release chakra stimulation technique, Yagyu now met the conditions to train in the phantom body flicker technique. Although his skill in Sharingan illusions couldn't match Shisui Uchiha's, and he couldn't yet create illusionary clones that wouldn't disperse, Yagyu didn't need the Sharingan to create such clones. He could achieve this with two techniques, the red eye illusion and the Naruto clone technique he learned from Kurane Ui. Both of these are illusion-based clone techniques. The former can't even be detected by the Byakugan, while the latter can be enhanced with the Sharingan. Moreover, these two illusion clone techniques can be merged. After some experimentation, Yagyu confirmed that this was indeed possible. Thus, he began developing the phantom body flicker technique using the red eye illusion and Naruto clone techniques. After some effort, he finally managed to master the basics of this ninjutsu body flicker illusion hybrid technique a few days before the Chunin exams. Unless his opponent had illusion proficiency and body flicker speed far above his, the phantom body flicker technique would be a nightmare for them. Nara Shikamaru was the perfect example. I give up. Realizing the swelling on the left side of his face, Shikamaru looked at the three Yagyus approaching him. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and surrendered. Yagyu's newly revealed ability rendered all of Shikamaru's strategies from the past month useless. Even if Yagyu held back, Shikamaru didn't know how many beatings it would take to figure out this technique and come up with a plan. Moreover, there was no guarantee that Yagyu didn't have other tricks up his sleeve. What if, after enduring so many beatings and finally understanding this technique, Yagyu suddenly revealed a new ability? Wouldn't that make all the suffering pointless? Since defeat was inevitable, Shikamaru decisively chose the path of least resistance. Even Sasuke Uchiha had been losing to Yagyu for 6 years, losing to him wasn't something to be ashamed of. The battle is over. The winner is Yagyu. Genma Shiranui loudly declared the result, looking at Yagyu with astonishment in his eyes. This Senju heir, who had been making waves among the Jonin circle recently, not only possessed mastery of water release techniques but had been hiding such a trump card as well. Whoosh! Almost immediately after Genma announced the result, a blue glow flickered from Shikamaru's body. The light flew out from his body, forming a floating blue orb beside him. Yagyu walked over to Shikamaru, extended his hand with a smile, and said, "Thanks for the match, Shikamaru. You're really something. Always hiding your true strength." Shikamaru muttered, holding back the word sneaky from slipping out as he grabbed Yagyu's hand and stood up. Deep inside, he felt a sense of pity for Sasuke and Naruto. Being born in the same generation as a monster like Yagyu was both a blessing and a curse for them. Once Yagyu fully matured, no matter what major events occurred, there would always be a towering figure standing tall. At the same time, they would only be left chasing after his shadow, perhaps never even seeing his back. The thought alone made Shikamaru feel a sense of helplessness and gloom. After completing the seal of reconciliation, Yagyu and Shikamaru headed toward the contestant tunnel. At the same time, the floating blue orb began to trigger its automatic collection sequence. However, instead of flying toward Yagyu, it floated higher into the air, heading toward a specific direction in Konoha. This meant that the Yagyu who had just walked into the tunnel with Shikamaru was not the real Yagyu, but a shadow clone. "Good luck, Ino, Hinata. You've got this." Back at the contestant stands, Yagyu's shadow clone cheered on the two girls. Him. "Hinata, don't go too hard on me. I don't want to embarrass myself too much in front of my father. Let's do our best together, Ino." The two close friends walked hand in hand toward the battlefield. Once they exited the contestant tunnel, their expressions became serious. Standing side by side next to Genma Shiranui, they raised two fingers to form the seal of confrontation. Third match, Yamanaka Ino vs Hyuga Hinata. Begin. At Genma's command, the friendly duel between Hinata and Ino began. Just like the match between Ino and Sakura, the two started by using ninja tools and smoke bombs to test each other out. Ino tried to use the smoke to find an opportunity to use her mind transfer jutsu. But even Sakura didn't give Ino the chance to cast her jutsu, let alone Hinata with her Byakugan. With her Byakugan activated, Hinata immediately locked onto Ino's position and rushed at her. Ino tried to repel Hinata by throwing ninja tools, but Hinata didn't dodge or counter with her own tools. Instead, she elegantly caught all of Ino's projectiles, either by inserting her fingers through the holes in the shuriken or by pinching the handles of the kunao between her fingers. The sight left Ino stunned. This was the prowess of the Hyuga clan's Byakugan and gentle fist technique. After catching all of Ino's tools, Hinata continued her charge and quickly closed the distance. What followed was a hand-to-hand combat sequence that the two girls had practiced countless times over the years. In taijutsu duels, Ino and Sakura often had wins and losses, but against Hinata, they had never won, not even once. Today was no different. Faced with Hinata's ability to see her chakra pathways, Ino couldn't even perform the basic three-body technique or body flicker without Hinata predicting and interrupting her moves. Hinata didn't humiliate Ino, though. At first, she only used basic taijutsu. But after 30 exchanges, Hinata switched styles and began using her gentle fist, striking a chakra point on Ino's arm, causing it to go numb and limp. In just a few more moves, Hinata had disabled Ino. The match is over. The winner is Hyuga Hinata. After Hinata subdued Ino, Genma immediately announced the result. As expected, I couldn't beat you. Ino accepted Hinata's extended hand and stood up, sighing, Hinata, you're getting stronger and stronger. No, I only won because of an elemental advantage. Back to her shy demeanor after the match, Hinata gently shook her head and raised 2 fingers in the seal of reconciliation. Thanks for the match, Ino. Hee. Thanks for the match. With the seal of reconciliation complete, the 2 girls returned to being close friends. Ino held Hinata's hand as they walked back toward the contestant tunnel. Seeing their friendly interaction, the audience suddenly realized that they were close friends. Yamanaka Inoichi and Hyaga Hayashi both nodded in approval. Hayashi, in particular, was very pleased with Hinata's strength and social connections. His only dissatisfaction was that Hinata's personality outside of battle was far too different from her battle demeanor. Her usual gentle nature didn't suit the role of a leader. If she had a personality more like Hanabi's, then with her friendship with the heir of the Yamanaka clan, Hinata would be the perfect candidate to inherit the Hyaga clan's leadership. After all, being friends with the Yamanaka heir meant being allied with the entire Inoshikacho trio. Once Hinata became the clan head, the Hyaga clan would be allied with the 3 great families. At that point, not even Konoha's higher UPS would dare to suppress the Hyaga clan. Chapter 64, The Konoha Crush Plan, Yagyu begins to act. After the battle between Hinata and Ino ended, the 3rd exam of the Chunin exams finally reached its main event, Gaara vs Suzuki Uchiha. Many spectators in the stands had come specifically to watch Suzuki Uchiha fight. These spectators included people from other parts of the Land of Fire, neighboring countries, and even many of Konoha's own villagers. Ironically, back when the Uchiha clan was still around, the people of Konoha despised and rejected them. This was due to the Uchiha police force's strict and sometimes overbearing nature, often causing friction with the villagers. But now, with the Uchiha clan gone, they were praised and revered. People were even willing to pay large sums of money for tickets to see Suzuki fight. It's fortunate there wasn't a war going on, or Konoha's civilians and shinobi, even the high-ranking officials, would miss the Uchiha clan even more. After all, it was widely known in the shinobi world that the Sharingan's one-on-one prowess was nearly unbeatable. Whoosh! Gaara emerged from the contestant tunnel, arms crossed as he stepped into the arena, his expressionless face clearly hidden beneath the defense of his sand armor. As Genma Shiranui checked his watch, preparing to declare Suzuki Uchiha disqualified due to his absence, a gust of wind carrying a few falling leaves suddenly appeared in the arena. In the next moment, 2 figures appeared before everyone's eyes. These 2 were none other than Kakashi Hatake and Suzuki Uchiha. Looks like we made it in time. We're not late, are we? Kakashi, striking a pose with his Ika Paradise book in hand, asked Genma Shiranui. Genma rolled his eyes. You were just a few seconds away from your student being disqualified. You really should work on your habit of always being late. It was clear from Genma's tone that he was on familiar terms with Kakashi, as he had once been one of the 4th Hokage's personal guards. As long as we're not late, Kakashi replied, putting away his book. He then turned to Suzuki, who had a few white bandages on his body but was brimming with confidence. I've taught you all I can. Now it's up to you to show what you've got, Suzuki. With those words, Kakashi vanished with a body flicker. So, you're my opponent? Suzuki looked at Gaara, who had left a strong impression on him a month ago. With an air of confidence, he smiled and said, it's great that you're my first opponent. Before I face Yagyu, I'll use you as a warm-up. Much like in the original story, Suzuki had grown cocky after his recent power-up. Since he hadn't seen the battle between Lee and Gaara, and aside from Yagyu, whom he had never beaten, he didn't take anyone else seriously. Gaara, on the other hand, remained silent, his expression unchanged under the protection of his sand armor. Just like Sasuke, Gaara didn't take his opponent seriously either. In Gaara's mind, Sasuke's performance in the previous round had been too weak. If that was the full extent of his power, Sasuke wouldn't even be able to break through his automatic sand defense. Currently, Gaara only regarded two opponents as worthy, the one who had fought him, Lee, and the one who had mastered water release and displayed powerful body flicker techniques and illusions, Yagyu. As for Sasuke Uchiha, Gaara had almost forgotten his name. Seeing that both contestants were ready, Genma Shiranui took a few steps back and raised his hand. The third match, Sasuke Uchiha vs Gaara. Begin. Whoosh. Sasuke didn't bother testing his opponent with tools, he immediately used the body flicker technique and disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared at Gaara's right side, launching a punch aimed at Gaara's face. Gaara's sand automatically rose to defend, but it failed to block Sasuke's punch. However, this attack was just a feint. In the next moment, Sasuke reappeared on Gaara's other side and threw another punch. Sasuke's speed was so fast that Gaara's automatic sand defense barely kept up, narrowly managing to block the second punch. Both Gaara, whose face was covered by the sand armor, and the others watching from the stands, including Sakura and Lee, were stunned. They were especially shocked because the speed and taijutsu techniques Sasuke was now displaying were nearly identical to the ones Lee had used a month ago after removing his weights. Watching Sasuke continually shift positions and attack Gaara, trying to break through his sand defense, Lee, now fully healed and sitting in the audience after being eliminated in the previous round, couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. Only he knew how much effort it had taken to achieve that kind of speed. His bandaged arms and legs bore the scars of his grueling training, scars that seemed like they would never fade. Yet Sasuke had gained the same results in just a month. This was the difference between ordinary people and geniuses. It felt like they lived in completely different worlds. Lee clenched his fists, feeling a deep sense of bitterness. Bang! At that moment, Sasuke broke through Gaara's sand defense and shattered the sand armor on Gaara's face with a punch. Since Gaara had never been touched in battle, his experience in taijutsu was nearly non-existent. Fearing that Sasuke might be able to use techniques as devastating as Lee's, Gaara hastily covered himself entirely in sand, forming a massive sand sphere. Inside the sphere, Gaara finally felt secure and used his third eye to control the sand from within to attack Sasuke. Fire release, Great Fireball technique. Outside the sand sphere, Sasuke tried to break through Gaara's defense with a fire release attack. However, after the fireball exploded, the sand sphere remained unharmed. Sasuke wasn't discouraged. Instead, a sly smile appeared on his face. He stopped wasting chakra and turned to run up the tall wall of the arena. Gathering chakra in his feet, Sasuke climbed the wall like a lizard and then formed hand seals. Crackle! Crackle! The sound of 1,000 birds chirping filled the air as Sasuke's right hand emitted a blue-white ball of lightning. Gripping the lightning in his palm, he charged downward. As he descended, Sasuke's hand was so close to the wall that the crackling lightning left a deep, gouged trail along the surface. Chidori! Sasuke charged toward the sand sphere, his lightning-covered hand piercing through the formidable defense. Ah! A scream echoed from inside the sphere. When Sasuke withdrew his arm, it was stained with blood. Seeing this, Yagyu's shadow clone, along with many others in the audience, narrowed their eyes. Hidden in the back of the stands, disguised as a member of the Leafs Anbu, Kabuto Yakushi formed hand seals and softly whispered, Genjutsu, Temple of Nirvana technique. Countless white illusionary feathers began to fall from the sky like snowflakes. The spectators who had been cheering for Sasuke's impressive performance and feeling satisfied with their tickets quickly became captivated by the feathers. As they stared at the feathers, their eyelids grew heavy, and their once excited expressions turned drowsy. Within moments, all the civilians and nobles had fallen asleep. Even some of the lower-ranked shinobi were affected. When the feathers touched those who had fallen asleep, they instantly dissipated. The people touched by the feathers were plunged into a deep slumber, unlikely to wake even if beaten or torn apart. It's a large-scale genjutsu. We're under attack. Only those with yin release chakra or those who reacted quickly and were strong enough managed to resist the effects of the feathers. These individuals quickly formed hand seals to dispel the invading yin chakra. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of rushing wind filled the air as figures leaped from the stands. These were sound ninjas disguised as civilians. As they discarded their disguises, they immediately began fighting the leaf shinobi in the stands, with many civilians caught in the crossfire. Over at the VIP section, Orochimaru, disguised as the fourth Kazekage, had already taken Sarutobi Hiruzen hostage and leaped onto the rooftop. A transparent purple barrier quickly rose, surrounding the rooftop. The battle between master and student was about to begin. Stop pretending, those two sand ninjas have already fled. It's just us here. Yagyu's shadow clone kicked the lying Shikamaru. Go wake up Naruto and Koji and help the others. This is such a hassle. This kind of situation is way out of our league as genin. Shikamaru scratched his head and reluctantly stood up. While Yagyu's shadow clone was organizing the genin in the contestants area, chaos had already erupted in the village outside the arena. The sound ninjas in the arena were just a small fraction of the force. The main army, along with the sand ninjas, was outside. As soon as the signal was given, they began wreaking havoc throughout Konoha. Some sound ninjas scattered around the village, taking out scrolls and blood vials to summon giant snakes from Ryokai Cave. The surprise attack from the sound and sand forces caught Konoha off guard. However, thanks to the guidance of the special Jonin, the village's shinobi quickly followed emergency protocols. Some banded together to repel the attackers, while others escorted civilians to the shelters. Due to the lack of manpower, the Anbu, who were originally stationed at the Hokage building, also left to support the village's defense efforts. In no time, the Hokage building was left with far fewer guards. No one noticed the cloaked figure wearing a white mask who had quietly snuck into the Hokage building. That figure was none other than Yagyu's real body. After using the shadow clone jutsu at home, Yagyu had sent his clone to the exam while his real body donned a cloak and mask. Using the red eye illusion to hide himself, Yagyu watched the match from afar while searching for his target inside the Hokage building with his farsight and X-ray vision. Now, with both his red eye and Kagura's mind eye active, Yagyu had a complete view of both the inside and outside of the Hokage building, as well as his target, all from a godlike perspective. Chapter 65, Acquiring Wood Release, Susanoo and the Great Buddha, One Man Destroys Four Nations. After sneaking into the Hokage's office building, Yagyu headed straight for the Forbidden Jutsu Archive. This area not only housed a large collection of ninja technique scrolls but was also where the Scroll of Seals was kept. However, if you observed closely, you'd notice that while Yagyu appeared to be heading toward the Forbidden Jutsu Archive, he wasn't hiding his presence with his red eye illusions. Instead, he walked openly through the Hokage building, as if deliberately drawing attention to himself. As Yagyu approached the Forbidden Jutsu Archive, a faint smile curled beneath his mask. The next moment, the ground beneath him gave way, transforming into a swamp, sealing off Yagyu's body flicker technique. Before he could react, the mud under his feet suddenly collapsed, dragging him downward like quicksand. Yagyu's perspective flipped as if he were falling. Below him was a seemingly bottomless pit, with wooden walls forming its perimeter. Before long, Yagyu landed at the bottom of the pit. Beneath the Hokage building, there was a vast underground base. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of rushing air filled his ears as several massive wooden vines, like serpents, struck at him. Even the ground beneath his feet sprouted vine-like tendrils attempting to bind him. However, Yagyu had already seen through the incoming attack with his red eye. A simple body flicker allowed him to evade the vines with ease. In his heightened perspective, Yagyu could see the dim underground base, and not far away stood a figure wearing a black cloak and a cat-faced mask. This was the person Yagyu had been targeting, none other than Tenzo, also known as Yamato in the original Shippuden series, the future leader of the new Team 7. Oh no, wait, he's still called Tenzo right now. Wood release, advent of a world of flowering trees. Seeing that his initial wood release attack had failed, Tenzo didn't bother questioning who Yagyu was. Instead, he immediately used a larger-scale wood release technique to gain the upper hand in the terrain. Saplings burst from the ground, rapidly growing into towering trees over 10 meters high, transforming the underground base into a miniature forest. Large amounts of wooden tendrils grew to seal the opening in the ceiling, which connected to the Hokage building above. Clearly, Tenzo intended to trap Yagyu in the underground base, giving him no chance to escape. While swiftly dodging the tendrils trying to bind him as they grew from the trees, Yagyu stood atop a tree branch, concealed within the sleeves of his cloak. With a quick series of single-handed hand seals, a thick white mist began to fill the air. In a few seconds, the dense fog turned the forest into a foggy woodland. Tenzo, who had previously been able to sense his surroundings through his wood release connection, now found only a vague outline of a figure in the mist. This is the hidden mist jutsu. Tenzo's pupils contracted under his mask. Isn't he supposed to be from the Sound or Sand villages, or is this just a cover for his true identity? Meanwhile, Tenzo wasn't idle, quickly forming his own hand seals, wood release, silent strangle jutsu. In an instant, yellowing tree branches extended from the surrounding trees like serpents or whips, lashing out to bind and strike Yagyu. Crackle, crackle, crackle. The sound of electricity filled the air as arcs of blue-white lightning flickered around Yagyu's body. Whoosh! Yagyu's figure disappeared, leaving only the sound of the air being pierced behind. He had activated a technique he had learned from Kurosuke Reiga ninja art, lightning armor. Originally, this technique required Reiga's twin swords to use, but after mastering lightning-style chakra control, Yagyu could now use it at will. Yagyu even discovered that by combining this offensive and defensive lightning jutsu with the lightning chakra stimulation method, his speed could instantly jump to maximum, effectively creating his own version of the lightning chakra mode. How is this possible? Tenzo's expression changed drastically beneath his mask. His senses were suddenly overwhelmed by numerous moving figures in the mist, and none of them seemed to be mere clones. These figures quickly disrupted his perception, causing Tenzo to lose track of the mysterious intruder. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of needles cutting through the air filled Tenzo's ears as a rain of senbon needles descended upon him. In the thick mist, Yagyu used his red-eye illusions to interfere with Tenzo's senses while deploying shadow clones to surround him. Together, they unleashed a barrage of ice needles created through his ice release technique, formed by mixing his chakra. Wood release, wood locking wall. Reacting swiftly, Tenzo summoned several wooden vines to form a cocoon-like shield around himself, blocking the oncoming ice senbon. Before long, the cocoon was riddled with holes, resembling a spiky hedgehog. Seeing this, a small smile appeared on Yagyu's face. One of his shadow clones, hiding nearby, quickly made hand signs, sending out a shadowy tendril. It was the shadow imitation technique and ability Yagyu had acquired from his fight with Shikamaru during the earlier rounds of the exams. That unexpected reward had led Yagyu to abandon the plan he'd spent a month preparing, opting instead to use this surprise ability to ambush Tenzo. The combination of the hidden mist jutsu and red-eye illusions was a terrifying combination, one that had even fooled the likes of Naruto and Guy's team in the original series, rendering Niji's Byakugan ineffective. Lacking an advanced sensory technique like the Kagura's Mind Eye or the Byakugan, Tenzo didn't notice the shadow creeping toward him. After defending against all the ice Senbon, Tenzo didn't immediately dispel his wooden shield. Only after sensing that no one was nearby did he cautiously release the shield, preparing to use body flicker to change positions. Ding! Ding! Suddenly, the faint sound of bells filled the air. Just as Tenzo prepared to move, he found himself frozen in place. A paralysis jutsu. Gritting his teeth, Tenzo tried to disrupt the flow of chakra in his body. But the next second, his body truly became immobilized. Due to the mist's cover, Tenzo failed to see the black shadow extending under his feet, robbing him of control over his body. Whoosh! With a sharp sound of electricity, a lightning-wreathed figure darted toward Tenzo. Yagyu's hand, glowing with lightning, cold energy, and blue chakra, struck a precise pressure point on Tenzo's body. Thud! Tenzo coughed up blood and immediately lost consciousness. That strike was known as the shock point strike. In Boruto, Himawari had used this technique to knock out Naruto, making him miss the 7th Hokage's inauguration ceremony. After acquiring the red eye, Yagyu had begun studying human pressure points, even asking Hinata for advice under the guise of developing medical ninjutsu. He learned which pressure points would induce unconsciousness. Since the technique required pinpoint accuracy, it was only effective if the target was immobilized. Until now, Yagyu had never used it. After all, if you could immobilize your opponent, why bother using a knockout technique when you could just kill them with a water release, hard whirlpool / However, Yagyu didn't want to kill Tenzo, so the shock point strike was the best option. Flash! The moment Tenzo lost consciousness, a red glow emitted from his body. Within seconds, a red beam of light emerged, coalescing into a floating red orb nearby. It dropped on the first try. Looks like my luck's holding up. As the mist dissipated, Yagyu's true body emerged from the forest, smiling in satisfaction at the floating red orb. This was the advantage of having a rich arsenal. Yagyu's original plan had been to expose his Sharingan and water release techniques, using ice release as a cover for his identity. However, after obtaining the shadow imitation technique from Shikamaru, Yagyu quickly changed his plan, choosing to continue hiding his Sharingan and devising a new strategy for the shadow imitation. The sound of bells had come from a sound-based genjutsu Yagyu had modified after obtaining the technique from Kin of the Sound 4. The technique had been adapted into a bell-triggered paralysis jutsu. After all, even in the mist, Yagyu needed to activate either the Byakugan, Red Eye, or Kagura's Mind Eye to see Tenzo. If he had relied on his Sharingan like Kakashi did against Zabuza, Tenzo would have remained invisible. Unable to locate Tenzo, Yagyu wouldn't have been able to use the paralysis jutsu or other binding techniques. Shikamaru's shadow imitation technique had come at just the right time, allowing Yagyu to avoid exposing his Sharingan or water release. Aside from using the hidden mist jutsu and red eye illusions, Yagyu hadn't needed to make any moves himself. His shadow clone had done the work of immobilizing and knocking out Tenzo. Thanks to the genius of shadow clone jutsu, Yagyu had succeeded in one attempt. Soon, the red orb was automatically collected, floating toward Yagyu. As it merged into his body, Yagyu's eyes gleamed with excitement. Once the orb was fully absorbed, Yagyu immediately summoned his virtual panel to check the highest rarity red item occupying the first slot. Spatial Inventory, Bloodline Limit would release red. The bloodline limit he had coveted for so long was finally his. Yagyu clenched his fist, nearly shouting aloud in excitement. In Yagyu's mind, no bloodline limit below the level of the Six Paths could compare to wood release in terms of its synergy with the Sage of Six Paths body. If Naruto had possessed wood release, he wouldn't have suffered the fate he did after losing Kurama in Boruto. With wood release and Sage mode, Naruto would still be among the strongest in the ninja world. Even Tenzo, a mere wood release experiment, could only wield about 20% of Hashirama Senju's power. But once Yagyu's Sage of Six Paths body fully matured and he learned Sage mode, his wood release would have the full 100% power of Hashirama. And if he could master all of Hashirama's wood release techniques, Yagyu would surpass even the most powerful shinobi below the Six Paths, becoming a near-invincible figure. When Yagyu's Sharingan evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan, and he could summon the complete body Susanoo, he would finally bring to life the legendary meme from his previous life, Susanoo on top of the Great Buddha, one man destroys four nations. Chapter 65, Acquiring Wood Release, Susanoo and the Great Buddha, one man destroys four nations. After sneaking into the Hokage's office building, Yagyu headed straight for the Forbidden Jutsu Archive. This area not only housed a large collection of ninja technique scrolls but was also where the Scroll of Seals was kept. However, if you observed closely, you'd notice that while Yagyu appeared to be heading toward the Forbidden Jutsu Archive, he wasn't hiding his presence with his red eye illusions. Instead, he walked openly through the Hokage building, as if deliberately drawing attention to himself. As Yagyu approached the Forbidden Jutsu Archive, a faint smile curled beneath his mask. The next moment, the ground beneath him gave way, transforming into a swamp, sealing off Yagyu's body flicker technique. Before he could react, the mud under his feet suddenly collapsed, dragging him downward like quicksand. Yagyu's perspective flipped as if he were falling. Below him was a seemingly bottomless pit, with wooden walls forming its perimeter. Before long, Yagyu landed at the bottom of the pit. Beneath the Hokage building, there was a vast underground base. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of rushing air filled his ears as several massive wooden vines, like serpents, struck at him. Even the ground beneath his feet sprouted vine-like tendrils attempting to bind him. However, Yagyu had already seen through the incoming attack with his red eye. A simple body flicker allowed him to evade the vines with ease. In his heightened perspective, Yagyu could see the dim underground base, and not far away stood a figure wearing a black cloak and a cat-faced mask. This was the person Yagyu had been targeting, none other than Tenzo, also known as Yamato in the original Shippuden series, the future leader of the new Team 7. Oh no, wait, he's still called Tenzo right now. Wood release, advent of a world of flowering trees. Seeing that his initial wood release attack had failed, Tenzo didn't bother questioning who Yagyu was. Instead, he immediately used a larger-scale wood release technique to gain the upper hand in the terrain. Saplings burst from the ground, rapidly growing into towering trees over 10 meters high, transforming the underground base into a miniature forest. Large amounts of wooden tendrils grew to seal the opening in the ceiling, which connected to the Hokage building above. Clearly, Tenzo intended to trap Yagyu in the underground base, giving him no chance to escape. While swiftly dodging the tendrils trying to bind him as they grew from the trees, Yagyu stood atop a tree branch, concealed within the sleeves of his cloak. With a quick series of single-handed hand seals, a thick white mist began to fill the air. In a few seconds, the dense fog turned the forest into a foggy woodland. Tenzo, who had previously been able to sense his surroundings through his wood-release connection, now found only a vague outline of a figure in the mist. This is the hidden mist jutsu. Tenzo's pupils contracted under his mask. Isn't he supposed to be from the sound or sand villages, or is this just a cover for his true identity? Meanwhile, Tenzo wasn't idle, quickly forming his own hand seals, wood release, silent strangle jutsu. In an instant, yellowing tree branches extended from the surrounding trees like serpents or whips, lashing out to bind and strike Yagyu. Crackle, crackle, crackle. The sound of electricity filled the air as arcs of blue-white lightning flickered around Yagyu's body. Whoosh! Yagyu's figure disappeared, leaving only the sound of the air being pierced behind. He had activated a technique he had learned from Kurosuke Reiga ninja art, lightning armor. Originally, this technique required Reiga's twin swords to use, but after mastering lightning-style chakra control, Yagyu could now use it at will. Yagyu even discovered that by combining this offensive and defensive lightning jutsu with the lightning chakra stimulation method, his speed could instantly jump to maximum, effectively creating his own version of the lightning chakra mode. How is this possible? Tenzo's expression changed drastically beneath his mask. His senses were suddenly overwhelmed by numerous moving figures in the mist, and none of them seemed to be mere clones. These figures quickly disrupted his perception, causing Tenzo to lose track of the mysterious intruder. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of needles cutting through the air filled Tenzo's ears as a rain of senbon needles descended upon him. In the thick mist, Yagyu used his red-eye illusions to interfere with Tenzo's senses while deploying shadow clones to surround him. Together, they unleashed a barrage of ice needles created through his ice release technique, formed by mixing his chakra. Wood release, wood locking wall. Reacting swiftly, Tenzo summoned several wooden vines to form a cocoon-like shield around himself, blocking the oncoming ice senbon. Before long, the cocoon was riddled with holes, resembling a spiky hedgehog. Seeing this, a small smile appeared on Yagyu's face. One of his shadow clones, hiding nearby, quickly made hand signs, sending out a shadowy tendril. It was the shadow imitation technique and ability Yagyu had acquired from his fight with Shikamaru during the earlier rounds of the exams. That unexpected reward had led Yagyu to abandon the plan he'd spent a month preparing, opting instead to use this surprise ability to ambush Tenzo. The combination of the hidden mist jutsu and red-eye illusions was a terrifying combination, one that had even fooled the likes of Naruto and Guy's team in the original series, rendering Niji's Byakugan ineffective. Lacking an advanced sensory technique like the Kagura's Mind Eye or the Byakugan, Tenzo didn't notice the shadow creeping toward him. After defending against all the ice senbon, Tenzo didn't immediately dispel his wooden shield. Only after sensing that no one was nearby did he cautiously release the shield, preparing to use body flicker to change positions. Ding! Ding! Suddenly, the faint sound of bells filled the air. Just as Tenzo prepared to move, he found himself frozen in place. A paralysis jutsu. Gritting his teeth, Tenzo tried to disrupt the flow of chakra in his body. But the next second, his body truly became immobilized. Due to the mist's cover, Tenzo failed to see the black shadow extending under his feet, robbing him of control over his body. Whoosh! With a sharp sound of electricity, a lightning-wreathed figure darted toward Tenzo. Yagyu's hand, glowing with lightning, cold energy, and blue chakra, struck a precise pressure point on Tenzo's body. Thud! Tenzo coughed up blood and immediately lost consciousness. That strike was known as the shock point strike. In Boruto, Himawari had used this technique to knock out Naruto, making him miss the 7th Hokage's inauguration ceremony. After acquiring the red eye, Yagyu had begun studying human pressure points, even asking Hinata for advice under the guise of developing medical ninjutsu. He learned which pressure points would induce unconsciousness. Since the technique required pinpoint accuracy, it was only effective if the target was immobilized. Until now, Yagyu had never used it. After all, if you could immobilize your opponent, why bother using a knockout technique when you could just kill them with a water release, hard whirlpool / However, Yagyu didn't want to kill Tenzo, so the shock point strike was the best option. Flash! The moment Tenzo lost consciousness, a red glow emitted from his body. Within seconds, a red beam of light emerged, coalescing into a floating red orb nearby. It dropped on the first try. Looks like my luck's holding up. As the mist dissipated, Yagyu's true body emerged from the forest, smiling in satisfaction at the floating red orb. This was the advantage of having a rich arsenal. Yagyu's original plan had been to expose his Sharingan and water release techniques, using ice release as a cover for his identity. However, after obtaining the shadow imitation technique from Shikamaru, Yagyu quickly changed his plan, choosing to continue hiding his Sharingan and devising a new strategy for the shadow imitation. The sound of bells had come from a sound-based genjutsu Yagyu had modified after obtaining the technique from Kin of the Sound 4. The technique had been adapted into a bell-triggered paralysis jutsu. After all, even in the mist, Yagyu needed to activate either the Byakugan, Red Eye, or Kagura's Mind Eye to see Tenzo. If he had relied on his Sharingan like Kakashi did against Zabuza, Tenzo would have remained invisible. Unable to locate Tenzo, Yagyu wouldn't have been able to use the paralysis jutsu or other binding techniques. Shikamaru's shadow imitation technique had come at just the right time, allowing Yagyu to avoid exposing his Sharingan or water release. Aside from using the hidden mist jutsu and red eye illusions, Yagyu hadn't needed to make any moves himself. His shadow clone had done the work of immobilizing and knocking out Tenzo. Thanks to the genius of shadow clone jutsu, Yagyu had succeeded in one attempt. Soon, the red orb was automatically collected, floating toward Yagyu. As it merged into his body, Yagyu's eyes gleamed with excitement. Once the orb was fully absorbed, Yagyu immediately summoned his virtual panel to check the highest rarity red item occupying the first slot. Spatial inventory, bloodline limit would release red. The bloodline limit he had coveted for so long was finally his. Yagyu clenched his fist, nearly shouting aloud in excitement. In Yagyu's mind, no bloodline limit below the level of the Six Paths could compare to wood release in terms of its synergy with the Sage of Six Paths body. If Naruto had possessed wood release, he wouldn't have suffered the fate he did after losing Kurama in Boruto. With wood release and Sage mode, Naruto would still be among the strongest in the ninja world. Even Tenzo, a mere wood release experiment, could only wield about 20% of Hashirama Senju's power. But once Yagyu's Sage of Six Paths body fully matured and he learned Sage mode, his wood release would have the full 100% power of Hashirama. And if he could master all of Hashirama's wood release techniques, Yagyu would surpass even the most powerful shinobi below the Six Paths, becoming a near-invincible figure. When Yagyu's Sharingan evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan, and he could summon the complete body Susanoo, he would finally bring to life the legendary meme from his previous life, Susanoo on top of the Great Buddha, one man destroys 4 nations. Chapter 67, Mission accomplished, the incident ends, and the new era begins. After emerging from the Naka River, Yagyu quickly changed into dry clothes, then donned a new black cloak and mask. He formed a hand seal and activated his Kagura's Mind Eye to check the location of his shadow clone. At that moment, his shadow clone had already organized the genin from the contestants' area. They received an A-rank mission from Kakashi Hatake and were on their way to the forest to assist Sasuke Uchiha in pursuing Gaara and his siblings. Satisfied, Yagyu reactivated his red eye's farsight and X-ray vision, searching for a particular place. After several minutes, Yagyu left Konoha and finally found the location at the base of a distant cliff. Using the lightning release chakra mode, Yagyu moved at full speed. By now, the Konoha ninja had nearly finished evacuating all the villagers to the shelters. According to Konoha's safety protocol, once the villagers were secure, the shinobi would gather all their forces and swiftly eliminate the remaining enemies. This meant that Hiruzen Sarutobi's death was approaching, and Yagyu had to act quickly to complete his objectives. He needed to finish before the incident concluded and then regroup with his shadow clone to create an alibi. Before long, Yagyu arrived at his destination. In front of him stood an old, weathered shrine, showing clear signs of age. Before the fourth Hokage's death, this place had been maintained regularly. But after the death of Minato and Kushina, no one came here anymore. This shrine was called the Mask Storage Temple. It was an ancient building left by the Uzumaki clan during the Warring States period, before they moved to the island and established Uzushiagakure in the land of whirlpools. Upon entering the shrine, Yagyu noticed the walls were covered with spider webs, and numerous masks hung from them. Each mask had a different shape and design, but they all bore the terrifying visage of a fanged demon. Yagyu's eyes glowed red as he swept his gaze across the rows of masks. Using his special red vision, he quickly identified several masks emitting a unique chakra signature. These were clearly special ninja tools. Yagyu took down several of these masks and immediately recognized the one he had come for, the Shinigami mask, which Orochimaru had used in the original story to retrieve his soul and release the spirits of the previous Hokage. Yagyu knew the effects of the Shinigami mask but had no idea about the abilities of the other masks. However, he could safely assume they were all related to the Uzumaki clan's sealing techniques. Thus, Yagyu stored the Shinigami mask and the other masks into a storage scroll and placed the scroll into his spatial inventory. Leaving the shrine, Yagyu looked up at the clear sky, feeling elated. He suddenly felt the urge to shout out loud. Everything had gone too smoothly, everything Yagyu had longed for was now in his possession, and things had gone so smoothly that it felt like he was favored by fate itself. But Yagyu knew that luck was only part of it. The real credit went to his journal, which recorded the main storyline and key events, and to his meticulous planning over the past month. Had he not encountered Reiga Kurosuke and the Red Eye bloodline user during his first C-rank mission, he wouldn't have set his sights on Haku. If he hadn't obtained ice release and learned one-handed hand seals from Haku, and later discovered that shadow clones could increase his drop rate, he wouldn't have devised the bold plan to gain wood release and forge his identity as a Senju descendant. If he hadn't suddenly recalled how Orochimaru had revived the previous Hokage, Yagyu wouldn't have come here to find the Shinigami mask. Now, everything was in place. The only thing left was to use Edo Tensei to summon the past Hokage and, as a descendant, request various forbidden techniques from Tobirama Senju, as well as the wood release ultimate jutsu sage art, wood release, true several thousand hands from Hashirama Senju. Yagyu had a plan, it just needed to be fine-tuned. The crackling sound of electricity suddenly filled the air. Using both the lightning release armor and the lightning release chakra mode together, Yagyu transformed into a streak of blue-white lightning and quickly made his way back to Konoha. Along the way, Yagyu once again fully activated his Kagura's mind eye, sensing that the Konoha ninja had all regrouped. This clearly meant they had finished evacuating the villagers and were now focusing all their efforts on repelling the enemies. Although Konoha was no longer the most powerful shinobi village it once was, its foundations were still formidable. Suna, being the weakest of the 5 great shinobi nations, with the least resources, hadn't sent its full force into the attack. They also lacked a second cage-level shinobi besides the 4th Kazekage. Once Konoha launched its counterattack, and the various ninja clans joined the fight, the tide quickly turned against Suna and the Sound Village. The master-student battle on the rooftop and Naruto's battle with Gaara were both nearing their end. As the Konoha 11 went to assist Sasuke, they were relentlessly pursued by numerous sound ninja. Kankuro had also stayed behind to cover Temari and Gaara's retreat. Yagyu's shadow clone had organized Team 8, Shikamaru, and Sakura to deal with the pursuing sound ninja and Kankuro, taking a low-profile, support role. From the beginning, Yagyu had no intention of standing out during the Konoha Crush plan. As Orochimaru had said, this event would restart the long stagnant wheels of Konoha. Even though Yagyu knew that Hiruzen Sarutobi was old and frail, and that even if he exposed his would-release abilities, he wouldn't be feared but rather highly valued and nurtured, he still wanted Sarutobi to die. If Sarutobi didn't die, it would give Danzo the confidence to continue his secret operations. Even if Sarutobi found out about Danzo's schemes, he would do little more than give his old friend a light reprimand. Even though Danzo had been stripped of his position as the Hokage's advisor, he still had the means to secretly cultivate root ninjas. If Sarutobi didn't die, and Yagyu brought Karin to Konoha, Danzo would undoubtedly target her. Yagyu didn't want to face future regrets, realizing too late that killing Danzo wouldn't fix things. Only when Sarutobi was dead and Tsunade took over as Hokage, bringing Karin to Konoha herself, would Yagyu feel truly at ease. In the original story, it wasn't until after the Pain Invasion, when Tsunade fell into a coma, that Danzo finally seized an opportunity to make his move. During the 3.5 years that Tsunade was Hokage, the most Danzo managed was appointing Sai to Team 7. This showed that Tsunade had a strong presence of authority. It made sense Tsunade was personally brought back by Jiraiya, the man who had loved her his whole life. Jiraiya would undoubtedly support her unconditionally. Opposing Tsunade meant opposing not only the major ninja clans but also Jiraiya and the Fire Daimyo. Without his position as Hokage advisor, Danzo certainly wouldn't have the confidence to stir up trouble. Before long, Yagyu reached the vicinity of his shadow clone. Before he could merge with the clone, Yagyu noticed 2 giant beasts battling in the distance, creating fierce wind and rain. These 2 beasts were the One-Tail, Shikaku, unleashed by Gaara through his fake sleep technique, and Gamabuntat, summoned by Naruto. The 2 titans clashed using wind and water release, their collisions creating a storm that shattered Sasuke Uchiha's worldview. Until that moment, Sasuke had never seen creatures of such size, nor jutsu with such vast range and power. At that moment, Sasuke finally realized that Naruto, the supposed dead last, had unknowingly surpassed him. The confidence and pride Sasuke had gained from learning that Chidori were utterly destroyed in that moment. One more push, and Sasuke would take the first step toward his descent into darkness. Seeing this, Yagyu knew the Konoha Crush plan was almost over. With the help of his red eye illusions and lightning release chakra mode, Yagyu quickly swapped places with his shadow clone. By this time, the sound ninja pursuing them, as well as Kankuro, had been defeated by Team 8 and Shikamaru under Yagyu's clone's guidance. Let's go! It looks like Naruto's battle is over. Yagyu led Hinata and the others toward the location where Naruto and Sasuke had fought. Before long, they came upon Naruto and Gaara lying on the ground, with Sasuke and Temari standing guard over them. Kankuro. Seeing Kankuro, unconscious and being carried by Shino Abarame, Temari's face filled with shock. Yagyu looked at the unconscious Naruto and asked knowingly, was that giant summoning creature Naruto's? Yet. Sasuke nodded with a complicated expression. Looks like we've won. Yagyu turned to Temari and asked, will you surrender, or fight to the death? We surrender. Seeing Yagyu and the others unharmed, Temari wisely chose to give in. A smart choice. From the looks of it, you're all important figures in Suna. You'll likely get out of this unscathed. In the future, we may meet again on the battlefield or in diplomatic exchanges. I'd rather not humiliate you now. Yagyu created a shadow clone, which lifted Gaara, who had been shocked into silence by Naruto's determination, though he hadn't lost consciousness. The real Yagyu then warned Temari, if you don't want your companion to get hurt, behave yourself and follow along. I understand. Temari nodded obediently. With that, Yagyu and his team began to head back the way they came, with Sasuke carrying Naruto and following closely behind. As Yagyu's shadow clone carried Gaara, and the sound of Naruto's heavy breathing filled his ears, Sasuke's eyes were filled with frustration. Once, only Yagyu had been stronger than him, and even then, the gap wasn't that big. But now, at least 3 of his peers had surpassed him. Even Naruto, whom he had always seen as inferior, had quietly overtaken him. With how weak he was now, how could he ever hope to kill that man? As these thoughts consumed him, the curse mark sealed on Sasuke's neck began to heat up, causing a burning sensation. At the same time, the image of the overwhelming chakra from the Chunin exams, the one that felt even more oppressive than Zabuza or Kakashi, flashed in Sasuke's mind. If he followed that man, he might become stronger. Yagyu wasn't aware of Sasuke's thoughts. Even if he had known, he wouldn't have been able to stop him. Since the age of 7, Sasuke had lived solely for revenge. As long as it meant he could kill Itachi Uchiha, he would pay any price. By the time Yagyu and the others returned to Konoha's central district, the Sound and Suna forces had either fled, been killed, or were captured. Seeing that Yagyu had safely returned with Team 8, Kurane Yui, who had been with Kakashi Hatake and Might Guy, breathed a sigh of relief. Well done. You've earned great merit this time, Kurane said with a proud smile when she saw the captured Gaara and his siblings. Kurane-sensei, is the battle over? Yagyu asked, glancing at the rooftop of the VIP section. The purple barrier was gone, and the rooftop was now occupied by several cloaked Anbu members. Yes, Kurane nodded, her expression turning serious. The 3rd Hokage has sacrificed himself. Hearing this, Yagyu and the others were visibly shocked, though Yagyu's reaction was somewhat exaggerated. With Kurane's words, it was clear that Hiruzen Sarutobi's era, which had lasted for decades, had finally come to an end. A new era was about to begin. Chapter 68, Yagyu and Kurane Yui. Just like the aftermath of the Nine Tails attack, the atmosphere in Konoha after the collapse plan was oppressive and filled with sorrow. Fortunately, thanks to the lessons learned from the Nine Tails incident 12 years ago, Konoha reacted quickly, minimizing the number of civilian casualties. Most of the deaths were from the shinobi who fought against the Sand and Sound ninjas. However, the snakes summoned from Ryokai Cave by the Sound ninjas still destroyed a large number of buildings. Without the aid of ninjutsu, it would take quite some time to repair the damage. Yet, these damages were not the greatest loss. The biggest blow to Konoha in this incident was the permanent loss of their 3rd Hokage. The 5 kage are the pillars of the 5 great ninja villages. The death of any kage deeply impacts the village's morale, sinking it to its lowest point. If a new Hokage isn't chosen quickly, the village could easily descend into chaos. Clients would begin doubting and losing trust in Konoha's strength. So, as soon as the collapse plan ended and word spread throughout the Land of Fire, the daimyo quickly sent envoys to Konoha's council to discuss whether they had a candidate for the 5th Hokage. But that's a matter for later. The next day, dark clouds loomed over Konoha, with flashes of white lightning flickering within the heavy clouds. The rumble of thunder occasionally echoed in the sky. The rain was on its way. At Yagyu's home, he stepped out wearing a black long-sleeved shirt and matching pants. Outside, waiting for him, were Hinata and 2 other girls, also dressed in black shirts and pants. Each of them held a white chrysanthemum in their hands, and their faces were solemn, lacking the smiles they usually wore. Together, the 4 of them made their way to the location of the memorial service. Along the way, Yagyu noticed many others dressed similarly to them. There were men and women, both shinobi and civilians. All were heading to pay their respects to the 3rd Hokage and the fallen shinobi. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed by a torrential downpour accompanied by thunder. Rain began to engulf Konoha. After lining up to offer their white chrysanthemums, Yagyu and the others stood at the back of the crowd, silently mourning. Some people were bowing their heads, sobbing quietly, while others remained expressionless. The rain drenched everyone, making it hard to tell whether the water on their faces was rain or tears. The sorrowful atmosphere weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. Even Yagyu, who didn't feel sad, was affected by the mood, feeling a deep heaviness in his chest. Thankfully, the memorial service ended soon after, and Yagyu and his companions dispersed to return home. Due to the solemn atmosphere and the heavy rain, Ino and the others didn't invite Yagyu to hang out or visit his home. It seemed it would take a few days before they could recover. After the service, villagers began rebuilding the damaged parts of the village. The higher UPS also discovered the situation at the Hokage Tower and with Yamato, and they were actively investigating the mysterious intruder. However, since nothing important had been stolen from the Forbidden Jutsu Vault, and the most valuable item, the Scroll of Seals, hadn't been taken, they had to temporarily set the matter aside. Right now, choosing the 5th Hokage was the most pressing issue for Konoha. Koharu Udaten and Homura Mito immediately approached Jiraiya, hoping he would take on the role of the 5th Hokage. As a student of the 3rd Hokage and the teacher of the 4th Hokage, Jiraiya was both powerful and had the ideal background to be the next Hokage. Of course, Jiraiya declined. But in this situation, it wasn't as simple as just saying no. Just like in the original story, when Koharu and Homura pressured him, Jiraiya mentioned someone even more suitable to become Hokage, Tsunade. When they heard that Jiraiya could find Tsunade and convince her to return to take up the mantle of Hokage, Koharu and Homura were silent for a few seconds before nodding. In the current Konoha, the only person more suited to be Hokage than Jiraiya was Tsunade, the granddaughter of the 1st and 2nd Hokage. Once Jiraiya and Tsunade's names were submitted to the daimyo, it was certain that Tsunade would be chosen. It was simply the power of Konoha's lineage. That very day, Jiraiya prepared to leave the village with Naruto to find Tsunade. On that same day, Yagyu woke up early, ate breakfast, and went to the front door of Kurane Yui's house. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking echoed, and Kurane soon opened the door. Seeing Yagyu standing there, Kurane, who seemed to have just woken up, yawned and said, "Oh, it's Yagyu. Come on in." She then turned and headed toward the living room. However, she didn't notice Yagyu rub his nose awkwardly. It couldn't be helped, Kurane didn't treat him as an outsider at all. Perhaps it was because she had just woken up, but Kurane was only wearing a red camisole nightgown, leaving her shoulders, collarbone, and slender back exposed. The hem of her skirt barely covered her hips, and her ivory white long legs were like magnets, drawing his eyes. Cough, cough. Yagyu closed the door, changed into the guest slippers at the entrance, and sat down on the sofa in the living room. Glancing at Kurane in the kitchen, he cleared his throat and reminded her, "Kurane-sensei, don't you think wearing something like that in front of a guy might be a little inappropriate?" "Ha! When did a 12-year-old kid like you become a man?" Kurane teased, holding a glass of milk and deliberately shaking it in front of Yagyu. "Besides, don't you remember the nickname for our teammate? When you turn 20 and can have a drink with your teacher, then we'll talk about you being a man. For now, drink your milk, kid." Yagyu's face twitched slightly as Kurane, clearly amused, headed into the bathroom to wash up and change clothes. Although Yagyu was nearly as tall as Kurane, only a few centimeters shorter when she wore heels, his age was still an undeniable fact, and he couldn't argue against that. Taking a sip of his milk, Yagyu found it surprisingly unappealing, despite his usual habit of drinking milk every day to grow taller. "So, what's the reason for coming to see your teacher so early in the morning?" Kurane asked after finishing her wash-up and changing into her usual ninja attire. She poured herself a glass of milk and sat across from Yagyu. Yagyu straightened up and replied, "I'm here today to ask if you would be willing to act as a sponsor to help someone join Konoha." Hearing this, Kurane's expression turned serious. She looked at Yagyu and asked, "Is this someone you met during the Chunin exams from another village?" "Yeah," Yagyu nodded, then explained Keirin's story. "She's a genin from Kyuzagakure that I met during the second stage of the exams. She's also a descendant of the Uzumaki clan." "A descendant of the Uzumaki clan? Are you sure?" Kurane's eyes widened in surprise as she looked at Yagyu. "Yes, I'm sure. I'm good at history, and I remember reading about how the Uzumaki clan were Konoha's allies both during the Warring States period and after the founding of the village, and that they were distant relatives of the Senju clan." Yagyu continued, "I felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity with her. When I rescued her, she was unconscious, and while treating her injuries, I noticed many bite marks of various shapes and sizes on her arms. That's a unique healing ability of the Uzumaki clan, vitality healing." "Is her hair red?" Kurane asked. "Yes, it is." "Then it's quite likely she's a descendant of the Uzumaki clan." Kurane nodded and then said, "I can be her sponsor, but you should know that any outsider wishing to join Konoha must undergo an interrogation by the torture and interrogation force to ensure they're not spies. Even if she is a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, she won't be exempt from this." "I understand, and she's willing to accept that. Looks like you two have kept in touch regularly. Is she in Konoha now?" "No, she's currently in Tanzuko town in the Land of Fire." Yagyu shook his head and explained, "Kyuzagakure has been using her as a medical tool. They even brought her to the Chunin exams for that purpose. When I realized she was a descendant of the Uzumaki clan and learned about her circumstances, I secretly helped her escape from Konoha and had her wait for me in Tanzuko town to avoid causing any diplomatic trouble for the village." Smart move. Kurane didn't criticize Yagyu for his actions. Instead, she praised him. Matters involving diplomacy weren't something they, as shinobi, could decide. If they found an Uzumaki clan descendant outside, that would be a different situation. As allies of the Uzumaki clan, Konoha had a responsibility to assist the clan's descendants. As long as it was proven she was indeed an Uzumaki, and if she passed the torture and interrogation force's scrutiny, bringing her back to the village would be seen as a commendable act. Kurane then asked, "So, are you here today because you want me to go with you to find her?" "Yes. As a genin, it's difficult for me to get permission to leave the village." "Come on, with how close you two seem, you've probably been sneaking out to see her regularly over the past month, haven't you?" Kurane rolled her eyes and teased, that phantom body flicker technique of yours, didn't you practice that during your secret trips? What phantom body flicker technique? Yagyu feigned ignorance. The one you used to defeat Shikamaru Nara. Oh, that it's actually a combination of the Naraku clone technique you taught me and the lightning chakra stimulation method. I almost believed you. Last time, you said you immobilized Rega with your binding technique, but you panicked when I mentioned bringing his head back. Seeing Yagyu's speechless face, Kurane suddenly burst into laughter. All right, I know you're careful about your identity. Ninjas shouldn't easily reveal their secrets. It's good to be cautious. Hee. So, would you mind coming with me? Yagyu scratched his head and smiled. Sure. We can't take missions for a while anyway, so a trip will be a nice change of pace. Kurane stood up, her eyes filled with anticipation. Chapter 69, Yagyu's Favor, Encounter with Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Hoshigaki. After deciding on their course of action, Kurane Yui quickly packed her bags, storing her items in a storage scroll. Seeing Yagyu empty-handed, Kurane couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you going to pack anything?" Yagyu took out a storage scroll from his pocket and smiled. "I've already prepared everything." "Impressive, it seems you were confident I'd agree." "Of course, you're the kindest and most compassionate teacher I've ever met, Kurane-sensei. Such a sweet talker, no wonder Hinata and the others can't stay away from you." If there was a noticeable height difference, Kurane might have playfully pinched Yagyu's cheek. His flattery made her quite happy. With Yagyu in tow, Kurane headed to the Hokage's office to obtain permission to leave the village. Just like how Kakashi Hatake could issue A-rank missions to genin during emergencies, Kurane, who had been promoted from Special Jonin to Jonin earlier in the year, also had certain privileges within the village. At the very least, she had the freedom to leave the village without much restriction. As Kurane finalized the paperwork and the two of them left Konoha, Sarutobi Asuma, who had been feeling down for days and staying at home smoking because of his father's death, finally decided to step outside. As if gathering courage for something, Asuma made his way to Kurane's house and knocked on her door. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking continued, but there was no response. Seeing that Kurane wasn't home, Asuma, who had finally gathered the courage to visit her, deflated like a balloon, his shoulders slumped as he walked away, head down. With a cigarette between his lips, Asuma's figure was one of melancholy. Little did Yagyu and Kurane know that just after they left, Asuma had shown up at Kurane's doorstep. By that time, the two of them had already handed over their travel papers to Izumo Kamizuki and Katetsuo Hagane, the gatekeepers, and had left Konoha. Until the fifth Hokage was chosen, the mission system was temporarily suspended, and no one could accept or commission tasks. This gave most shinobi, except those guarding the borders and major cities, some time off. This was one of the reasons why Kurane decided to take a break and clear her mind. Since the Hokage's succession ceremony would be announced nationwide, and Tanzuko town was a small town within the Land of Fire, Kurane and Yagyu weren't in a hurry to use body flicker and instead walked leisurely as if on a sightseeing trip. Along the way, they chatted. "Yagyu, how do you manage to perform genjutsu without hand seals?" "Well, it's not entirely seal-free. At least for the genjutsu you taught me, Kurane-sensei, I still use one-handed seals. It's just that my hand seal speed is so fast that most people can't notice. As for the seal-less genjutsu, I trigger them using sound. I learned it from a sound ninja skilled in sound-based genjutsu during the second part of the Chunin exams." "I see, I thought your yin chakra had grown strong enough that you no longer needed seals." Kurane nodded, believing Yagyu's lie. After all, using one-handed seals could indeed catch enemies off guard, which was why Yagyu had coveted Haku's one-handed seal technique so much. Yagyu had been practicing his hand seal speed since childhood, so if he wanted to, he could move his hands fast enough to be undetectable, just like Uchiha Itachi. Your genjutsu skills are now almost on par with mine. Kurane patted Yagyu's shoulder and smiled. When we get back from Tanzaku town, you should come by and spar with me more often. It'll help us both improve faster. Of course. Yagyu nodded obediently on the surface, though internally, he wondered how much he should hold back. It wasn't that he looked down on Kurane, but his current genjutsu skills were only a Mangekyo Sharingan away from those of a genjutsu master like Uchiha Itachi. Itachi and Shisui became genjutsu masters largely because of the overwhelming power of the Mangekyo Sharingan. The three-tomo Sharingan was already known as the Eye of Hypnosis and the Eye of Genjutsu. It could perform genjutsu without seals and automatically reflect enemy genjutsu against those whose yin chakra was inferior. However, even the three-tomo Sharingan's yin chakra output paled in comparison to the Mangekyo Sharingan. Only with the Mangekyo could one truly control a tailed beast. Just think about how strong the yin chakra output needed to be to control a tailed beast with just a glance. Even Uchiha Obito, whose body was half composed of Hashirama's cells, controlled one of the 5 kage, Yagura Karatachi, using only a single Mangekyo Sharingan. When Yagyu's Sharingan had evolved to 3-tomo, thanks to gaining the genjutsu specialist talent from Kurane, she was no longer a match for him. Though Yagyu had far surpassed Kurane in strength, he still held deep respect and gratitude toward her. Just as Might Guy was willing to teach his students the 8 gates, Kurane had entrusted Yagyu and his teammates with the Ui clan's genjutsu techniques not long after meeting them. If Shino or Hinata possessed yin chakra, they too would have become genjutsu specialists, and Team 8 would have been known not just as the reconnaissance team but also as the genjutsu team. For that reason, Yagyu was extremely grateful and respectful to Kurane. Yagyu had even decided that after Karin joined Konoha, he would use her as an excuse to teach some sealing techniques to Kurane. Especially the Uzumaki clan's yin seal Yagyu was certain Kurane wouldn't refuse. After all, what woman could turn down eternal youth? Of course, Kurane had no idea what Yagyu was planning. If she did, she would surely be deeply touched and grateful. A good teacher needed good students, otherwise, it would be a one-sided relationship, and sometimes students might even turn on their teachers. By the way, Kurane's ruby-like eyes suddenly sparkled, and she looked at Yagyu with excitement. Did you bring your camera? Yes, I did. Do you want to take pictures? Of course. It's not every day we get to leave the village without being on a mission. We have to capture some beautiful memories. Kurane then used the body flicker technique, her voice trailing in the air. Grab the camera and follow me, I know some great spots to take photos. Seeing her disappear into the distance, Yagyu became intrigued. He pulled out his camera from his storage scroll and used the body flicker to follow her. The Land of Fire was known for its dense forests, and you could see lush trees, cliffs, and waterfalls everywhere. The location Kurane took Yagyu to was similar to the place where Yagyu trained by the waterfall. There, Kurane posed in various ways next to the waterfall, asking Yagyu to take pictures. She even stood on the river, using chakra to balance on the water's surface, or stood under the mist of the waterfall, allowing Yagyu to capture the scene with water vapor surrounding her. Yagyu continued snapping photos, occasionally adjusting the angle of the shot and asking Kurane to move based on the direction of the sunlight, capturing stunning images of her amidst the natural scenery. Finally, Kurane suggested, Yagyu, let's take a picture together. Sure. Yagyu didn't refuse. He made a shadow clone to operate the camera while he stood next to Kurenai. With a bright smile, Kurenai wrapped an arm around Yagyu's shoulder, her eyes curving into crescent moons. Yagyu smiled as well, his hand casually in his pocket. Click! The camera shutter clicked, capturing a beautiful image of a teacher and her student, standing by the misty waterfall, as if they were in a mythical realm. This picture would likely end up framed on Kurenai's desk once developed. After that, Kurenai led Yagyu to several more scenic spots where they continued taking pictures and posing together. By midday, Kurenai's stomach grumbled in protest, causing the black-haired kunoichi to blush. She threatened Yagyu to forget what he'd heard and then took him to a nearby town for lunch. After lunch, the two continued their leisurely journey, enjoying the scenery. In the late afternoon, as the sun began to set, they decided to pick up the pace using the body flicker technique to ensure they found a village or town to rest before nightfall. Suddenly, the clear sound of wind chimes reached their ears. Two figures appeared ahead on the forest path, walking slowly toward them. As soon as Kurenai and Yagyu saw the two figures, their pupils shrank. Kurenai sensed an overwhelming aura, causing her body to instinctively tense up. Yagyu recognized them. He couldn't help it, their attire was too iconic for a reincarnated person like him to forget. They wore black cloaks embroidered with red clouds and conical hats with wind chimes. Even without seeing their faces, Yagyu immediately knew who they were. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Hoshigaki. Yagyu's heart sank slightly. He hadn't expected to encounter these two here, where Itachi, under the pretense of gathering intelligence, was really planning to return to Konoha to warn Danzo. Kurenai-sensei, don't act rashly. These two are incredibly powerful, Yagyu whispered softly enough that only the two of them could hear. Kurenai nodded, feeling the immense pressure. She didn't need Yagyu to tell her she could sense that these two were strong. The faces under those hats were probably ones she had seen in the bingo book. What were such powerful individuals doing in the land of fire? And judging by the direction they were traveling, it seemed they were heading toward Konoha. Why were they going there? With these thoughts, Kurenai became even more cautious, not only for Yagyu's safety but also to report back to the village as soon as they distanced themselves from the duo. Sometimes, encounters on narrow paths were awkward. If one party made a sudden move, it could expose their intentions. If one side posed no threat, it might be fine, but when both parties harbored their own thoughts, tension arose. Just like the time Team 8 passed by the Kuratsuka family, neither Yagyu nor Kurenai made any moves. They acted as if they were ordinary travelers passing by. However, as the four of them crossed paths, an unexpected event occurred. Ryeb. Kisame's sword, same heta, wrapped in white bandages, began to twitch violently as if it had caught the scent of something irresistible. The sword tore through its bandages and lunged toward Yagyu, jaws open wide, eager to bite into its target. Already on high alert, Yagyu and Kurenai immediately used the body flicker to evade. As Yagyu flew backward, he inflated his cheeks and expelled a high-pressure stream of water, slicing through the air toward Itachi and Kisame. Kisame grabbed same heta's hilt, and he and Itachi disappeared using body flicker. Yagyu's eyes briefly flashed red as he adjusted his water jet, slicing it toward the 3 o'clock direction. Crash! Trees were severed at their trunks, toppling over with a loud crash and raising clouds of dust. The water jet Yagyu unleashed was none other than the water release, water-severing wave. After developing the film containing all the techniques he had photographed, Yagyu's first priority wasn't learning wood release or sealing techniques, it was mastering Tobirama Senju's water-style jutsu. Having trained in water-style chakra control since childhood and having developed the spiral water dragon and S-rank hard whirlpool cutter using the chakra control techniques he had learned from Sakura, Yagyu had firmly established himself as the top water-style user in Konoha. Given his mastery, learning new water-style techniques was like a simple task, similar to clicking a learn button in a video game. As the water jet cut through the trees, clearing a swath of forest, Yagyu suddenly stopped. Splash! The sound of rushing water filled the air. A massive wave rolled through, scattering the dust and rushing toward Yagyu and Kurane. They quickly used the body flicker again, landing atop a tree. The waters swirled, turning the area into a lake, with water reaching halfway up the trunks of the remaining trees. On the now barren lake's surface, two figures stood, their conical hats removed. Kisame gripped the twitching Samehada, his shark-like face twisted into a grin. For Samehada to go out of control like that. Itaka-san, do you think that kid could be the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki? No, Itaki replied flatly. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki has blonde hair and blue eyes, like the fourth Hokage. Kisame's grin widened. So he's not the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, yet he has chakra that excites Samehada and can perform such a powerful water jutsu. Itaka-san, Konoha really is a cradle of geniuses. That water-style jutsu is probably the second Hokage's water-severing wave, Itaka said with a calm expression, though he sighed internally. As expected of the top student who had always bested Suzuki, Yagyu clearly wasn't just some ordinary orphan. Yes, Itaka knew who Yagyu was. At first, Itaka hadn't recognized him because Yagyu had grown so much. But now, after studying his hair and eyes, Itaka remembered. As a devoted brother, Itaka had always kept a close eye on Suzuki. By the time Itaka had massacred the Uchiha clan, Suzuki was already 7. Yagyu had gained the chakra of Ashura when he was 6, and Itaka had heard about him being named the top student over Suzuki. Itaka had once thought Yagyu was just another talented commoner, but now it seemed he might be the true monster of Sasuke's generation. Through the lens of Itaka's Sharingan, Yagyu's chakra reserves were as abundant as those of Kisame, the man known as the tailless-tailed beast. And Yagyu was only 12, still growing. When Yagyu reached Kisame's age, just how astonishing would his chakra reserves be? Could it be that Yagyu was a descendant of the Senju clan, having inherited their bloodline? No, that couldn't be the only explanation. Senju blood alone wouldn't account for such absurd chakra levels. There had to be another secret within Yagyu's body, one that gave him this extraordinary chakra. Itaka pondered this quietly. Chapter 70, The Battle of Water Gods, Kurane-sensei defeated again. Itaka-san, now that we've been spotted, should we take care of them? Kisame Hoshigaki grinned wickedly. Otherwise, when we reach Konoha, we might just be caught in their web of traps. Uchiha Itaki remained silent for a few seconds before calmly replying, "We're still in the land of fire, and after passing through a small town, we'll be near Konoha. There's a chance that Konoha shinobi could pass by here at any moment. We need to kill them as quickly as possible." Understood. Leave that kid to me, Kisame said, his expression twisted with anticipation. That kid's massive chakra and powerful water-style jutsu have made me curious. I want to see if my hunch is correct. As if understanding Kisame's words, Samehada, the sword wrapped in white bandages, began to shake violently, drawn to Yagyu's chakra with an insatiable hunger. That person is Uchiha Itaki. Kurane finally recognized him, her red pupils contracting in shock. Seeing Kisame next to Itaki, cold sweat appeared on her forehead, and her voice trembled, "And that's the monster of the hidden mist, Kisame Hoshigaki. Why are two S-rank rogue ninjas here? Without time to process it fully, Kurane watched as Kisame, holding Samehada, sprinted across the water towards them. She quickly shouted, "Yagyu, we need to run. They're top-level rogue ninjas, and we're no match for them." "You're right, Kurane-sensei," Yagyu replied, his expression serious. "Such dangerous individuals traveling together must have some hidden agenda. Judging by the direction they're heading, they're probably on their way to Konoha. Now that we've identified them, they won't let us go easily. With our strength, escaping from 2 S-rank rogue ninjas will be incredibly difficult. So, Kurane-sensei, you should escape. I'll stay behind and buy you time." "No." Kurane immediately shook her head. "I can't leave you behind. If anyone should stay, it's me." "Don't be reckless, Kurane-sensei," Yagyu said gravely as Kisame drew closer. "You saw how I defeated Shikamaru. You know how fast I am. If I stay to hold them off, we both have a chance of survival." "No more arguments," Kurane said resolutely, pulling out a kunao. "If we die together. I won't abandon my student." Seeing Kurane's unwavering determination, Yagyu smiled slightly. "Very well then, let's fight them together." "Yes. I'll take care of Uchiha Itachi," Kurane said, inadvertently making a bold statement. "Water style, water shark bullet jutsu." Kisame's voice echoed as the water beneath Yagyu and Kurane swirled and transformed into a massive shark, its jaws wide open as it lunged upward toward them. Swish! Swish! Both Yagyu and Kurane vanished with the body flicker technique. Kurane landed on the water's surface, running toward the motionless Uchiha Itachi. Meanwhile, Yagyu also appeared on the water, riding on a water-formed surfboard that carried him at high speed towards Kisame. As he sped forward, Yagyu pulled out a kunao from his pouch, coating it with water-style chakra, transforming it into a fluid, razor-sharp water blade. That water-style chakra control and shape manipulation. "Looks like my guess was right," Kisame grinned, his bloodlust growing. He seemed excited to have found a kindred spirit. In response, water formed a surfboard under Kisame's feet as well, propelling him toward Yagyu at high speed. The two were like surfers racing across the water, ready to clash head-on. Just as they were about to collide, Yagyu suddenly leaped into the air, switching his grip on the water blade from a reverse hold to an overhead slash aimed at Kisame. Kisame gripped Samehada with both hands, swinging upward to intercept Yagyu's strike. Boom! Water blade and Samehada clashed, sending a violent shockwave across the lake, creating ripples and waves. Despite Yagyu's best efforts, his water blade left no mark on Samehada. Not only that, but the water chakra coating Yagyu's kunao was quickly absorbed, disappearing entirely. Yagyu wasn't surprised. He already knew about Samehada's ability. In fact, he had used water blade slash precisely to create this opening. Taking advantage of the moment while Samehada was absorbing his chakra, Yagyu puffed his cheeks and shot several water needles toward Kisame's eyes and face. If hit, Kisame would be blinded instantly. However, a water shark suddenly emerged from the lake, swallowing Kisame whole. The shark absorbed the impact of Yagyu's water needles, then leaped back into the lake, pulling Kisame away from Yagyu. Seconds later, the water shark burst from the lake again, dissolving into water. Kisame, unharmed, rested Samehada on his shoulder and grinned. Such cunning tactics and water-style jutsu. Combined with your silver hair and red eyes, you must be a descendant of the Senju clan. Yagyu had no time to respond to Kisame's taunts. Realizing his sneak attack had failed, he glanced briefly toward Kurene's side of the battlefield before deciding to go all out. Raising his right hand, a swirling blue chakra sphere formed in his palm, quickly becoming a mini whirlwind. Within seconds, the color deepened to an even richer blue. Water from the air and the lake gathered into the whirlwind, transforming the chakra sphere into a swirling mass of water. Without hesitation, Yagyu hurled the mini water tornado toward Kisame. The moment it left his hand, the vortex began sucking up water from the lake and moisture from the air, growing rapidly in size until it became a towering water cyclone, racing toward Kisame. Impressive no-hand seals and a jutsu I've never seen before. Looks like I underestimated you, Kisame remarked, setting same hata back on his back. He quickly formed hand seals and thrust his hands forward. Water style, Great Shark Bullet Jutsu, a colossal water shark, even larger than before, erupted from the lake, its massive jaws opening wide as it charged toward Yagyu's water cyclone. When the two jutsu collided, there was no explosion or stalemate. Instead, Yagyu's water cyclone was instantly overwhelmed, its chakra and water absorbed by Kisame's shark, making the already massive creature grow even larger as it surged toward Yagyu like a mountain. Zzz. The crackling sound of electricity filled the air, and in the blink of an eye, Yagyu disappeared, evading Kisame's monstrous shark. When Yagyu reappeared, he was a few meters to Kisame's left, mid-air, holding a water spear. But instead of throwing it at Kisame, he hurled it toward the lake several meters away. Seeing the water spear, Kisame's expression changed drastically. Without hesitation, he used water-style, water shark bullet jutsu again, encasing himself in a shark made of water to flee into the lake. Boom! Just after Kisame escaped, a massive explosion rang out. The water spear unleashed a terrifying amount of chakra, forming a gigantic water tornado that absorbed the surrounding water, growing even larger than Yagyu's spiral water dragon. Water style, giant exploding water colliding wave. As Kisame evaded Yagyu's attack, he unleashed another torrent of water from his mouth, flooding the area once again and raising the water level to its previous height. He quickly followed up with another technique, water style, for shark rain. Four enormous water sharks leaped into the air from all directions around Yagyu, their massive bodies casting shadows as they lunged toward him. Water style, water wall. Yagyu clapped his hands together, summoning a swirling water vortex around himself, forming a protective barrier. The four sharks collided with the spinning water wall, breaking apart into thousands of smaller sharks, but they were unable to breach Yagyu's defense. Instead, they were sucked into the vortex and dissipated as their chakra was depleted, ultimately strengthening Yagyu's water wall. Once the threat was neutralized, Yagyu's water wall expanded outward, transforming into a river-like stream that surged toward Kisame. Though the attack was powerful, it had a clear wind up, much like Kisame's giant shark from earlier. Kisame easily evaded the strike with a body flicker, but the resulting explosion of water drenched him, making his grin even more savage. In just a few minutes, Yagyu and Kisame had exchanged several high-level and secret water-style techniques, each requiring a tremendous amount of chakra enough to drain a jonin instantly. Their battle was like a clash between two gods of water. While Yagyu and Kisame were locked in combat, the battle on the other side had already ended. Just like in the original timeline, Kurane, who had only recently been promoted to Jonin, had no experience dealing with the Sharingan. After years of the Uchiha clan's extinction, the Sharingan had become a legendary bloodline limit. Kurane, who had never faced someone like Kakashi with an implanted Sharingan, had no idea that the Uchiha's natural three-tomo Sharingan was far more potent. Despite taking the battle seriously, Kurene's full-strength attack, the demonic illusion, tree-binding death, aimed to immobilize Itaki and follow up with an offensive genjutsu. But just as the large illusionary tree materialized and wrapped its vine-like tendrils around Itaki, Kurene's vision abruptly shifted. The next moment, as she prepared to perform her follow-up jutsu, she found herself paralyzed. Somehow, Itaka had closed the distance between them, standing directly in front of her. When she looked up, she realized that they had switched places. Now, she was the one ensnared by her own tree-binding death technique. Horrified, Kurene gasped, "Genjutsu reversal win. It began the moment you made eye contact with me," Itaka said softly as he drew a kunai from his sleeve and stabbed it into Kurene's body. "I didn't want to kill you, Kurene-san. But since you've discovered us, you've left me no choice. As an old comrade, I'll at least give you a merciful death." With that, Itaka's three-tomo Sharingan morphed into a Mangekyo pattern resembling a tri-bladed shuriken. The powerful yin-release chakra from his Mangekyo Sharingan surged into Kurene's mind, taking control of her nervous system and immobilizing her. Just one look from Itaka was enough to leave Kurene utterly defenseless, her body moving like a puppet. The illusionary vines and tree that had bound her disappeared, but she collapsed into the lake, her body slowly sinking beneath the bloodied waters, with the kunai still lodged in her abdomen. "Sensei!" Yagyu's furious voice roared. Water style, water dragon biting explosion. A massive whirlpool appeared beneath Itaka's feet, forming a giant dragon-like maw that surged upward to swallow him whole. Swish! Itaka vanished with the body flicker, leaving the water dragon to snap at empty air. A huge water dragon burst from the lake, lunging toward Itaka's new location. Fire style, Great Fireball Jutsu. Itaka's hands formed seals in a blur, and he exhaled a small flame that rapidly expanded into a massive fireball, colliding with the water dragon. Boom! A massive explosion followed, releasing a thick cloud of steam that enveloped the battlefield. The sight seemed to give Yagyu an idea. Thick fog materialized from thin air, turning the lake into a misty realm. Despite the sudden fog, Itaka remained expressionless, though he silently breathed a sigh of relief. Good thing this kid isn't reckless, otherwise, creating an opportunity for them to escape might have been impossible. This boy, Itaka thought, truly is more exceptional than Sasuke. He just hoped Yagyu wouldn't take out his anger on Sasuke for Itaka's actions. With a final thought, Itaki observed the fog dissipating and confirmed that both Yagyu and Kurene had vanished without a trace. "Itaka-san, it seems they managed to escape," Kisame said as he returned to Itaka's side, acting as though he hadn't noticed Itaka's deliberate mercy. "Are we still heading to Konoha, even though our identities were revealed?" "Yes," Itaka replied coolly. "Kurene-san is under my Mangekyo Genjutsu. She'll be out of commission for a while. Let's complete our mission quickly." Kisame, slightly concerned, asked, "Did you use that technique?" "No, she didn't warrant the use of Tsukuyomi," Itaka said, adjusting his hat. With that, he started walking toward Konoha again. Kisame followed, remarking, "It's been a while since I've fought so freely. It's a shame that kid wasn't able to go all out. I wonder if we'll cross paths with him again." "We will," Itaka replied. "After all, the Nine Tails Jinchuriki is in Konoha." "True. I hope the boss's plan gets underway soon." With that, Itaki and Kisame continued their journey, leaving the battlefield behind. Thanks for watching.